Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm coming to you by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1374 of the War News stream. And also, it is the day after Thanksgiving, and it's good to see you all once again. And we have heard today that Ukraine has attacked Russian oil tankers in the Black Sea. It's a big Thanksgiving to them. Also, Russia suffered major damage after a new Ukrainian drone strike. And also, a Russian ICBM, one of their nuclear missiles that carries the warhead, actually exploded during a test today, which may mean that their missiles are not in good shape. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news from around the world, as we have heard significant news, especially of the Russian Federation's developments, and also those from around the rest of the world. Significant news has emerged from the Black Sea that 2 Russian Shadow Fleet tankers have exploded and are currently engulfed in flames, as the crews of both vessels have abandoned ship and the vessels are currently adrift at sea. It is believed at the moment that it's highly likely that these were Ukrainian attacks, as the Russian Federation has declared that the fires and explosions on board the vessels was due to external circumstances, which sounds incredibly close to the maritime version of the phrase falling debris. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation, speaking of falling debris, had a significant falling debris situation today near the area of the Yasny testing range within the Orenburg Oblast, as a Russian missile fired by the 31st Guards Rocket Division, carrying an Avangard hypersonic glide vehicle, actually went awry right over the launch pad several hundred meters up, and then catastrophically exploded after it made impact with the ground. Some Russians have declared that the rocket test was successful, it's just that the target was a lot closer to the pad than anticipated, while other Russians have stated that it may have been a failure, but they're currently saying that from a gulag, so what do they count for? Still, the Russian Federation is trying to put more pressure on the West, as we have heard a statement by Dmitry Medvedev, an advisor to the president of the Russian Federation, and also known as a bit of a rambler. He has stated today that the Russian Federation will not sign any peace agreements with the state of Ukraine because they consider the Ukrainian government to be that of an illegitimate one. And for that matter, the entire Ukrainian state is also illegitimate as well. So they will not sign any peace agreements with the state of Ukraine directly whatsoever into the indefinite future. Pretty much making it incredibly clear they're not going to accept any peace deals, whether the United States is proposing it or not, because to get a peace deal in place, the Ukrainians have to be an active party in accepting it, and the Russians are making that incredibly clear. They're not going to accept any sort of a negotiated peace with the Ukrainians at this point. The Ukrainians have decided to take out the Russians' stupidity on themselves by conducting significant attacks today along the entire length of the Kama River, with attacks being seen within Naberezhny Chelny, Yabeluga, and Kazan, all within the same hour. Significant damage was caused to multiple different facilities within the area, while Ukrainian drone attacks also targeted the Belgorod Oblast, the city of Luhansk, and also the Beriev aircraft manufacturing plant again. Additional news has also been seen around the world as the United States of America has continued to ramp up its possible strikes against Venezuela, with air defense radars being set up within Trinidad and Tobago today, while Maduro's plane appears to have taken a special flight incredibly close near to the Venezuelan-Brazilian border. Nobody knows why that was conducted, but the United States is also stating that there is a decent possibility of the President of the United States and the Venezuelan president getting engaged in talks here within the next week or two. Although we don't know what in the world those talks would even be about. And we've also heard at the same time the president has stated that strikes on Venezuela are probably going to be coming up soon. Meanwhile, the Islamic Republic of Iran is now conducting significant airstrikes within the northern part of Iraq and Kurdistan against the Kurdistani people, and is also conducting military exercises along the western area of the border at this moment as well. We've also seen that the Russian Federation has dealt with even larger disasters today, as the collapse of their prepping stage or prepping platform at the Baikonur Cosmodrome has occurred, largely meaning that Russia is now not able to complete launches of their Soyuz capsules into orbit, and at the same time we have also been able to hear of larger developments from inside of Europe. Suffice it to say, it's actually been a kind of a wild day, all things considered, and also we have a little bit of news out of East Asia. But we are going to be making sure to get into all of the large stories first, and then work our way on into the rest of the smaller stories throughout the night. Of course, going in sequence and order like we always have, from the largest stories first to the smallest stories towards the latter end of the stream. And so with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into all the major news that we have for today. And I also hope that y'all have enjoyed Thanksgiving, and I also hope that y'all have been enjoying Black Friday here in the United States. I hear that Black Friday is a lot more civil than it used to be. People used to beat each other up for a discount on a TV, but I've never been out on a Black Friday inside of a store, so I personally wouldn't know. But anyways, moving on from that and into our major news inside of the area of the Black Sea, news came out earlier today from Russian sources of a report on the ongoing situation within the area. As news was stated, that according to RAI Novosti, a tanker caught fire in the Black Sea off the coast of Turkey due to external influences. The Turkish Maritime Authority reported on Friday that the crew is being evacuated. Not on fire, but, you know, it's on Friday. There's about to get to the point where it is on fire. A report was received that a fire broke out due to external influence on the tanker Kairos, which was en route to Novorossiysk without cargo, 28 miles off the coast of Turkey, technically within international waters. The condition of 25 crew members is normal, the department reported in a press release. The tanker under the Gambian flag is currently in the Black Sea. That is the vessel that was hit, the Kairos. Rescuers have been dispatched to the vessel to evacuate the crew, according to the Department of the Turkish Maritime Authority. It is clear whose external influence this is, at least according to the Russians, and I'd have to be honest with y'all folks, I'm generally kind of agreeing with that. It's kind of clear who in the world did this, but we'll get to that in a second. So, at this moment of the story, the Turkish Maritime Authority had confirmed that the Kairos, a Gambian flag tanker that was inbound to Novorossiysk, had been set on fire by some sort of an external influence, which is clearly an explosion. Later on, we then were able to confirm that 2 Russian tankers had actually been hit and exploded. This first picture here is actually the stern side, the port stern side of the Kairos, directly near to the engine bay. One thing that's incredibly interesting to note off of this picture is that the Kairos is on fire at the waterline. This is something that is incredibly important to note, as a fire emerging from the hull of the vessel directly along the waterline would heavily suggest that there is an actual open hole hole or puncture within the hull of the vessel that is allowing for the fire to vent out directly from the machinery spaces and into the open air on the port side of the vessel. We can also see that smoke is completely billowing across the main sail of the vessel, or more so what we would call the superstructure of the vessel, which is largely shrouding it except for the exhaust stack, which is directly behind the superstructure. There also appears to be an additional bit of fire that is also lapping out of the hull as well on the port side, pretty much right over the propellers and rudder areas, which is also showing us once again that there must be a puncture to the hull, heavily indicating that this is an explosion that happened on the side of the vessel directly along the waterline, or incredibly close to the waterline at that point. We also saw an additional picture of the other vessel that was originally not talked about in the Turkish Maritime Authority's account, which is the Virat. At the moment, we do not know what nation the Virat was being flagged out of. It's a little bit unclear at the moment, and it appears the information we were able to get later in the day did not really clarify exactly what nation or nationality the Virat claims to be, but the Virat was also heavily on fire as well, but due to the distance that this picture was taken at, we can't really tell exactly what side of the vessel it was on fire, or for that matter, if there was a breach or puncture near to the waterline, like there was on the Kairos in this picture here. Still, these fires are confirming, at least at the moment, that two tankers, alleged to be shadow tankers of the Russian Federation, with the Kairos clearly being inbound to Novorossiysk, empty to be loaded with oil, showing that it clearly was attempting to violate some sort of sanctions at this point, was exploded largely within the southern Black Sea and caught on fire. Now, there's something else interesting.
Seems a little strange to me that two of these oil tankers would catch on fire and explode at the exact same time, pretty much in the exact same vicinity. Seems like a very strange coincidence, if you ask me. And also, when they say external factors, it's like, what does that really mean? I've seen speculation that one of these was allegedly hit by some Ukrainian drone boats. That was one allegation. And I've also seen allegations that maybe the second one, or one of these boats, actually struck a sea mine of some sort. But right now, that's what the claims are. But very, very odd. They're both getting hit at the exact same time in the same general area that Ukraine would have a reach.
And that is a really crazy sort of a thing, to be entirely honest with you all. Two vessels blown up at about the same time, about the same distance from the Turkish coast, mind you all. This is something very important to point out right here. According to the original report for the Kairos, which was made by the Russians, the vessel was hit, if we were to assume that it was hit, 28 miles off of the coast of Turkey. Now, this is something incredibly important to point out, is that it's 28 miles off of the coast. Territorial waters only extend by international law 20 miles off of the coast of a country. The exclusive economic zone can extend several hundred miles out to sea, but territorial waters, where a country has direct legal control of what happens within its waters, is only 20 miles. This vessel was blown up 8 miles outside of territorial waters, technically within Turkey's exclusive economic zone, but exclusive economic zones, while being under the exclusive ability of that specific country to use for economic purposes, is not something that is considered to be the sovereign territory of that country, meaning that for the large part, this vessel was blown up in international waters, which is an incredibly important thing to remember here, especially considering that if the Rat was also, the Virat was also blown up as well, had to say Rat there because I was trying to think of what was in front of the name Rat, but if the Virat was also blown up around the same distance outside of the coast of Turkey, that means that both of these vessels blew up within international waters, which also means that as far as attacks on those vessels, according to maritime law, they would generally fall under a certain sort of legality that would allow for attacks on commercial merchant vessels, especially ones that are considered to be important to the wartime activities of an enemy state in the midst of an ongoing war. Another thing that I also want to point out is that we have pictures of these two vessels right here. This is the Kairos, which is what we understand to be the first vessel that was hit in the sequence of the attacks that happened within this area. It was flagged out of Gambia at the time of the attack, and it was transporting fossil fuels, and was openly noted, at least according to war sanctions, in being a violation of the oil embargoes that currently existed against the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, we also saw that the Virat, pictured here with an unknown flag of origin or flag of nationality, was also hit as well, and is on the sanctions list for transporting Russian crude oil and oil products in violation of other restrictions, making it somewhat clear that, at least at the moment, both of these vessels were on a registry of some nation somewhere in the world, either the United States, the UK, or European states, for violating the ongoing sanctions against the Russian Federation and being in the alleged dealings of illegally transporting Russian crude oil from the Russian Federation elsewhere. The case is pretty hard to deny, especially considering that the Kairos had already declared that it was inbound to Novorossiysk empty at that point, which obviously leads to the question, why in the world would they be going to Novorossiysk as an empty oil tanker to an oil port, if it was not to load up with Russian oil and then ship it out somewhere else within the greater world? So it clearly does show that the Kairos was most likely involved in sanctions jumping at that time. The evidence seems somewhat clear of that. Still, both vessels did end up with a catastrophic fire, and apparently the fire was catastrophic enough that firefighting efforts on board the vessel were entirely unsuccessful, and news has now emerged that both the crews of the Kairos and the Viret have abandoned ship, and the vessels are currently adrift at sea on fire. It is expected that they will most likely sink due to the damage caused by the fires. The fires burn incredibly hot, and the extreme temperatures alone could lead to the buckling of welds in between the hull's plates, or could lead to the buckling of the hull plates themselves, which will allow for the egress of water and the eventual sinking of the vessels somewhere within the Black Sea. It's really hard to say where they currently are adrift, but it most likely will be somewhat close to the Turkish coast, or getting a little bit farther on out into the middle of the Black Sea before the vessels sink. Still, the damage appears to be somewhat significant, and it's a bit of a wonder to think that the Ukrainians, if we are to believe that they were the ones who pulled this off that far down the Black Sea. It's not unheard of, but it's incredibly rare to see such an action happen. Not only that, another important thing that I have to remind you all of here is that the Ukrainians have already been conducting, in an armed sense, an embargo on Russian oil and also natural gas. The Ukrainians have conducted attacks against Russian refineries, Russian natural gas pumping stations. They've also conducted attacks against Russian oil ports, which would load the oil onto these ships for them to be able to export it out to sea and to another country. And now it appears that the Ukrainians are also conducting attacks on the oil tankers themselves. Largely, it's a three-in-one sort of an embargo. The Ukrainians are not only stopping the Russians from producing any sort of crude oil or refined fuel products, they are also destroying the ports that would load those fuel products onto the ships, and not only that, they are also stopping ships from even existing at this point to be able to load oil onto them and then ship it out into the greater world. It's quite clear at this point that the Russian Federation is dealing with quite a difficult situation, as the Ukrainians are largely trying to guarantee that the Russians cannot sell a drop of oil into the international market if the Ukrainians have the ability to stop it, and is also trying to hurt the Russians financially as much as they possibly can. A lot of people have been talking about this development within the Black Sea today, and what kind of consequences or greater actions could come as a result of the attacks on the Russian shadow tankers today within the southern area of the Black Sea, and whether or not the Russian Federation will attempt to directly respond to this or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so now we saw the two oil tankers explode and catch fire in the Black Sea today around the same time, which seems like a very odd spontaneous fire if you ask me. Will Russia respond to it? And 51% said yes, Russia will respond, while 31% said no, Russia will let it slide, and 8% said it depends on the U.S. response. So here's the dilemma that Russia has. Technically, these are not Russian oil tankers. That's the technicality here, but they appear to have been going, at least allegedly, to a Russian port to allegedly, once again, pick up oil. That's right now the allegation. So it's a shadow fleet vessel, if you want to call it that. Essentially, that's my personal opinion on the matter. It looks like a shadow fleet vessel of some sort, just based on my layman's observations. But I would say that Russia is going to be a little bit hesitant to respond to it because, number one, if they acknowledge it, then they'll basically be acknowledging their shadow fleet, which is something they probably don't want to do. At the same time, though, they can't afford Ukraine to start striking so many of these tankers that it ends up affecting their entire economy, even worse than it's already being affected, and then risk not having a response to it. So I'm personally a little bit on the fence about this one. I'm actually with the 10%. I'm actually kind of undecided because Russia has a very big decision to make on this one. Also, by the way, Real quick, let's examine what Ukraine's ability to strike these boats, or ships actually look like. So we do know that the most recent version of Ukraine's naval drone called the Magura V5, it has a 500-mile range on it, about 800 kilometers or so. Also, the Sea Baby has about a 930-mile range, and there's also a more advanced Ukraine drone called the Katran that's reported to have a range of 3,000 kilometers. So Enforcer, show us the distance from Ukraine's nearest seaport to go all the way down to hit that vessel. Can you show us what the pretty much the distance is on that?
Interestingly enough, it's actually not that far. It's well within range of even Ukraine's earlier drones that were used at the beginning of the war. The distance all the way down here is only about 334 miles, so practically any Ukrainian drone sailing in a straight line could make it to those vessels and hit them directly right off the coast of Turkey.
Interesting. So it looks like you said it was how many miles again?
About 330 or 340.
Yeah, so that means pretty much any of them could. It could have been a Magura, it could have been a Sea Baby, it could have been any of them actually. So that's the benefit of Ukraine's long-range drone boats they've been working on is they can go all the way down there and strike a boat like that. But once again, I don't think Ukraine's officially acknowledged that they hit these vessels, but the reports are that one of the vessels said that they saw drones coming in, and then the other one, I believe, is saying that they hit a sea mine or something, which sounds really sus. I'm not sure if there's a sea mine just lurking around that area where the ship was at. Seems unlikely. So, in my personal opinion, I think Ukraine struck both of them. And right now, there's some confusion about it and also some uncertainty about how Russia's going to respond to it.
I would have to be honest with y'all, I would have to more so lean into the idea that the Ukrainians conducted the attack on these two vessels, considering the fact that it wasn't just a singular vessel that was hit by an errant mine. It was two vessels that appeared to have exploded in close proximity to each other within a very similar area of the Black Sea. One mine largely setting itself loose and floating in the open sea isn't anything that's unheard of. That has happened before, and we have seen mines wash up on the Black Sea and the coast of the Black Sea multiple times in the past. However, two ships getting hit at the same time by explosions, catching on fire, both of them shadow tankers, allegedly, and both of them are damaged so heavily that both crews have to abandon ship and leave the vessels adrift at sea, leads me to believe that this is highly likely a Ukrainian drone attack that happened against these boats within the area. The Ukrainians haven't officially confirmed that, most likely to keep the ongoing responses and tensions from the Russians low, but that will not stop the Russian Federation from trying to react to this. Russia is trying to react to basically everything they can when the Ukrainians conduct an attack on their oil industries or any part of their oil logistics that the Russians pretty much need to be able to survive. With that in mind, I would highly believe that the Russians will most likely try and respond to this. It's just that recently, Russian responses have started to get quite small due to their lack of an ability to mount an incredibly large response. The last time the Ukrainians hit a port, which was the port of Novorossiysk, and pretty much knocked out all of its abilities in one night, the Russians responded by firing 4 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles into Ukraine. That was the next day after. That is something that is quite rare. We rarely ever see Kinzhals or any quote-unquote hypersonics fired into Ukraine in that large of a number on a single day, but they did attempt that, and from what we understand, 3 out of the 4 Kinzhals were shot down by Ukrainian air defense. So not only was the initial response to the Novorossiysk attack somewhat small, but the actual impact of the response from the Russians was also incredibly small as well, with only 1 out of 4 Kinzhals making it to their target, with the other 3 being shot down by Ukrainian air defense. So generally, I'd have to say, I think that the Russians will try to respond, but it's probably going to be such a small response, it'll be incredibly hard to notice it unless you're paying heavy attention to what they're doing and what they're trying to do to the state of Ukraine. So that would be my general opinion on the matter, to be entirely honest with y'all. I don't really think that there's going to be a lot of a big response to come out of this, because the Russians really can't respond in a larger way anymore, but they will attempt a response nonetheless. The response, at least to the international situation on the diplomatic field, was made by the Russians today, or attempted to be made by the Russians today, about the fact that Russia is generally considered to be a joke in the international world. The only country that seems to be treating Russia like they're not a joke these days is the current U.S. government, which is actually treating the Russians like they have some teeth. Nevertheless, the entirety of Europe, most of East Asia, and practically everyone else in the world looks at the Russian Federation as an absolute joke, a nation that is militarily severely incompetent, its nuclear arsenals are most likely aged and weakening, and considering that the nuclear arsenals are really the only thing that Russia can lean back on to try and defend itself, the nuclear arsenal in Russia's mind has to be taken seriously, otherwise their national security may be in jeopardy or at stake. The Russians understand that quite well, and over the past few decades have heavily invested in trying to modernize or recreate the will in a way by recreating Soviet-era nuclear weaponry or older Cold War-era concepts to try and make the Russian Federation seem like a far more dangerous nuclear power than it has been due to its aging and derelict nuclear forces. And that brings us down to the area of the Yasny range, within the area of Orenburg, and more importantly, to the 31st Guards Rocket Division. The 31st Guards Rocket Division is generally a solely nuclear-based force, and operates a large part of the nuclear arsenal of the Russian Federation, including the one near Yasny. Yasny is a little bit important because while it's an incredibly small town within the Russian Federation, all things considered, Yasny just north of that area has a testing range. This is a part of the Yasny launch base, and the Yasny launch base is a lot like the Outer Banks test range, actually. Out here, they whip out ICBMs and other forms of longer-range rockets and conduct tests of them, much like we do in the United States from Vandenberg and other facilities, to show that their nuclear weapons are operational, the current ones that they have, or, for the newer ones, to show that they actually work, to try and instill fear in the world, and to make the Russian Federation seem like a power to be at least respected at a minimum and feared at the greatest. The Russians have really been trying lately to push forward a new weapon system that has been put on top of the older UR-100N or UR-100N NTTH, which is also known, at least in NATO designation, as the Sarmat or the SS-19 Stiletto. The SS-19 Stiletto looks like a large lipstick tube, but these nuclear weapons have been in service in the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation for decades. The first of the SS-19s, or the UR-100s as they're called in Russia, came into service around 1975. Since then, the Russian Federation in modern times has tried to make this weapon system as competent or capable as it can be. I want to put this out there really quickly, though. There's a bit of a misnomer about this sort of thing with nuclear ICBMs. ICBMs are incredibly hard to intercept, if not impossible to intercept, even with modern air defense systems and technologies. Most ICBMs, during their mid-course and terminal phases, can reach speeds well over Mach 10, and their re-entry vehicles, once deployed from the MIRVs, are going so fast that modern radar systems would rarely ever be able to detect them, and usually near to the point of impact, multiple independent re-entry vehicles are usually still traveling around Mach 10 to Mach 15 to 16, which makes it largely impossible to be able to even attempt an interception of most MIRVs that would start to enter the U.S. airspace. Still, the Russian Federation doesn't really care about that fact, that ICBMs are generally still a major threat that nobody can really counter at this point. They want to make it, at least in theory to the public, even more dangerous sounding. So they have developed what is called the Avangard Hypersonic Missile Delivery System. And let me go and show you all that here really quickly. There's a little bit of a difference. Some people call it the Avangard ICBM, but it's actually the delivery system on top of a UR-100. The Avangard is a hypersonic glide vehicle, which basically means that it's a simple MIRV. The MIRV operates as normal. It releases its warheads over its target, and all of the independent warheads will make it to their own targets, either a city or a military installation or major critical industry, and explode directly overhead, usually in an airburst, and in some situations, for entrenched targets, will explode in a ground burst to completely destroy whatever is below the ground and entrenched inside of it. The Avangard is supposed to be a lot more scary, generally because it has the word hypersonic in it, but in reality, it really doesn't change the fact that we couldn't have even intercepted a lot of the MIRVs in the first place, or any of them for that matter, so the Avangard isn't really changing that. They're still non-interceptable, and once they are deployed, there's really nothing we can do about it, and once we deploy our MIRVs over the Russian Federation in this sort of an exchange, there's really nothing the Russians could have ever done about it. This still doesn't stop the Russians from trying to make this the best thing since sliced bread, and to fill the entire world with fear that the Russians have a weapon that is completely non-interceptable, and attempting to try and change the nuclear ball field towards Russia's advantage, at least mentally. The Russians tried to show this off today by conducting a test launch out of the 31st Division of one of these UR-100s that actually is equipped with one of these Avangard hypersonic glide vehicles. and it went quite poorly. It suffered a critical failure. And let me go and show you all that right here really quickly. Actually, let me go get you all the longer clip, or duplicate one, that actually showed the entire launch from the beginning to the end, which was quite quick. So, here's the clip. We do not know who filmed this, but a huge shout out to whoever filmed this. They were close enough to the testing range that they not only saw the original launch, but they also saw the soon-to-come failure. And so, let's take a little gander. There's the launch. We can already see, Matthew, I don't know if you noticed this, and I'm not really an expert here, but I don't believe that missiles are supposed to be traveling sideways right off of the pad.
You wouldn't think so. I think you're supposed to go straight up and then go into like you know, that little like velocity like around not necessarily in orbit, but around the Earth. But I think you're supposed to go straight up the first time. Very pointy.
Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to go sideways here, but anyways, it appears that the missile, with its amazing mind, you know, once again, we have to remember, everyone, that the Avangard is the most advanced missile on the planet. Nothing can stop it. Not even atmosphere, not even gravity, not even Russian incompetence. So the Avangard glide vehicle system, and also the missile's computer systems, attempt to correct the terrible launch that is already failing at this point by, instead of tilting to the right, trying to tilt to the left to offset the lean. So then the missile ends up keeling over right here, and now we can see that it's over-adjusting at this point in the flight, and now it's tumbling. So
Wow.
So at this point right here, just to give you all the play-by-play of what's actually happening, at this point right here, the rocket's exhaust, due to the fact that the missile is traveling at a somewhat faster speed sideways, is now going directly across. Let me see if I can show you all this here on an SS-19. Let me go pull it up. Let's see here. SS-19. Well, I almost had my esophagus explode right there, but let me see. So, that's not really a big enough picture. Let me go get you all a better one. So, let's see. Nah, we don't want to shop for one. We want an image of one. Yeah, I think this is probably going to be the best that we can do for now. So this is kind of the best picture that I can get for you all of an SS-19. Once again, the lipstick-shaped sort of a missile. Down here, when the rocket is flipped sideways, the exhaust of the rocket at that point is getting thrown off. There isn't really a lot of force in it anymore because the entire rocket's fuel system is generally fed by gravity, unless if it gets to higher altitudes, and usually then it's powered by some sort of gas which is pushing the fuel further on down. But at this point, the rocket has lost a lot of its exhaust power. So for that reason, a lot of the extremely hot fires coming out of the nozzles of the rocket are actually lapping over the other ones and catching them on fire. And that's where the smoke is starting to emerge from, as the rocket's motors are actually starting to overheat and practically explode on the spot at this point when it's flipping sideways. Now it's flipping upside down. So now the exhaust is actually going to start eating the rocket itself at this point.
Да ну нахуй.
And we can see that right there. Now most of the rocket is actually starting to catch on fire at this point, or at least the external skin, which is now either igniting because of the temperatures, or it is starting to melt, one or the other. At this point, the Russians did the only smart thing during this whole test, which is that they aborted, and you can see this little explosion right here. Watch this. And that is the escape capsule actually firing the Avangard hypersonic glide vehicle off of the rocket. So at this point, the Avangard is completely separated from the UR-100, which was actually carrying it up till this point. The Avangard, from what we saw in the clip, just free fell to the ground, no parachute deployed from what we could tell, or any other action was made for that matter beyond this point. But at this point, the Avangard has ejected off of the missile, and the missile's body itself is now without the warhead. So there goes the warhead, and now the entire body
Also,
of
that
the missile...
warhead... Yeah, also that warhead wasn't armed, I would assume. Like, that wasn't an actual live warhead. It was a dummy warhead, I'm assuming.
Yes, the warheads on board are inert, but the Avangard vehicle itself was on board at the time.
Yeah, honestly, imagine if this thing was actually equipped with a real live warhead. Like, this would have been disastrous for Russia. This would have been basically a nuke exploding pretty much over their land at this point.
Not over their land, right over the launch pad. I mean, this thing fell, I think, only several hundred meters away from the launch pad. It may as well have been directly over it. But the body of the missile is now free-falling, mostly on fire. The Avangard is also free-falling over here to the right. And then the body of the missile, still filled with fuel, impacts the ground right near the launch site and explodes.
Ебать. Бля, держите меня, я снимаю.
Oh wow, they're giddy at it too. It's kind of crazy. They're actually laughing at their own missile failure. It's kind of wild.
It is, honestly. So also, this is what's hilarious. This little plume of smoke right here is from the initial launch. This mushroom cloud, which is only about several hundred feet away, is from the missile's landing, which wasn't an incredibly long distance. So at this point, folks, Russia has entered the Robert Goddard era of rocketry from like 1926, where they launch a rocket a couple of hundred feet in the air and it lands pretty much in the same spot it took off. They finally entered the early era of rocketry, at least off of the distance and abilities of the UR-100.
Also, imagine the cost of this, by the way, because, Russia right now has no money going to anything except for pretty much their military advancements in Ukraine. That's pretty much where all their money's going. So it's not like they have money to repeat this test like, 1,000 times over or something. This was pretty much one of the very few tests they can actually probably afford to do pretty much at all.
Yeah, I mean, really, it is a crazy sort of a deal to see this. And not only that, what's even more interesting to hear is that apparently the Russian Federation is not only going to be dealing with the loss of an entire Avangard generally, considering that no chute deployed, we would assume that the glide vehicle itself was actually damaged or destroyed in the midst of this, but the firm satellite is showing that not only did the area of the impact catch on fire, but the launch site is also on fire as well. So now they're losing an entire launch site at the Yasny testing range, along with the rocket, due to the fire damage that was caused afterwards.
That is crazy.
That is absolutely crazy. It is an absolute embarrassment of the Russian Federation to see yet another nuclear test fail. The United States, for several years now, has been firing off Minuteman IIs from Vandenberg Space Force Base, and we have seldom, if ever, seen a significant number of critical failures of those rockets. Generally, we have something around an 80 to 85% success rate in the launches of our missiles that we have conducted since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. On the other hand, it appears that the Russian Federation, from all tests that we've been able to see so far, have only had about a 35 to 40% successful launch rate of the nuclear missiles that they attempt to launch, including this one today, which was once again another catastrophic failure. This is leading us to believe that the Russian Federation's nuclear arsenal is in an incredibly derelict and dire state of repairs, considering that even their best examples, which generally would be the ones used in tests to show off their nuclear prowess, are generally suffering catastrophic failures either on the pad or directly above the launch pads, or they don't even launch at all due to critical failures that even stopped an attempt at a launch. All of this is leading us to believe that the Russian Federation's nuclear arsenal at large may be to the point of inoperability. We may see that there is a significant percentage still, maybe 35 to 40% of their nuclear weaponry that is operational, but we can consider the lion's share of their arsenal, 60 to 65% of it, to largely be inoperable if we were to take these tests as an actual litmus test on how much of the nuclear arsenal is actually operational in Russia. This is a huge embarrassment, and not only that, it is showing that the Russian Federation does not have the giant nuclear arm that they always have claimed to have had since the Soviet Union fell in 1991. But a lot of people are talking about this explosion, and a lot of people are speaking on the matter whether or not Russian nuclear weapons are well maintained. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so is this failed missile test today, is it proof that Russia's nukes are likely ill-maintained? And it looks like only about 45% said it only takes one to be deadly, so that's all that counts, while 34% said yes, all of their nukes are probably broken, and 14% said it's probably just an isolated failure of this one missile that exploded, and it's probably a good portion that still work. So I would tend to agree with the 45%. It does only take one to be deadly, just simply one large nuclear missile. That would be enough to cause a nuclear bad situation, as they say, a very, very bad situation, nuclear warming, some call it. So it only takes one to be deadly. But on the question overall, though, about the maintenance of Russia's nuclear arsenal, I would say that my guess is they're not maintaining the nukes the way they should, because maintaining nukes takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of manpower, and also it takes the expertise to do it. And I think Russia is pretty much lacking all three of those major requirements to maintain their nuclear arsenal. So I would say it is very likely that a good portion of their nukes are probably in very foul shape, probably broken, I guess you could say, for a lack of a better word. But at the same time, though, that does not mean we can write off the Russian nuclear threat, because even if they have just a handful of them, that's still enough to pretty much, hurt the West significantly. So we can't just write it off. Also, by the way, not only is it this Russian ICBM failing, but we've also seen several Oreshnik IRBM tests fail over and over and over again. And we've also heard rumors of of even more than the public ones failing. So it seems like Russia's entire nuclear arsenal is not very good, and they're lacking the expertise to develop them and keep them in operational status. But Enforcer, what say you?
So this is something interesting for all of you all to know. Currently, the U.S. Department of Energy, which is the one who's actually responsible for the nuclear weapons in America, and that's also a little bit funny, folks, because people don't know this, but the military actually doesn't directly control the nuclear weapons. It's actually the Department of Energy that controls the nuclear weaponry within the United States. But the Department of Energy has been given a projected cost analysis of around 95 billion US dollars to maintain our nuclear arsenal in its entirety over the next decade. So it costs roughly about 10 billion US dollars per year for the United States to be able to maintain its entire nuclear arsenal. Which, when you put that into perspective of the whole of the US military, that's actually not a lot of money. That's about the cost of, about a whole Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier every year, plus a couple of billion on top. Not too bad. But when we put that on the Russian Federation, it's an entirely different story. Considering that they had a military budget of around $50 billion pre-war, that means that they would have had to put about 20% or 1/5 of their entire military budget into maintaining their nuclear arsenal, which at the time was not only identical to the US's nuclear arsenal in size, but historically was actually far larger than the United States nuclear arsenal, meaning that it's highly likely they were spending several more billion a year than we were to maintain the large sum of nuclear weapons that they had on paper, if they were maintaining them properly. We would generally assume that they probably weren't, because they were trying to shave off some costs to be able to put more towards the conventional army and the expected modernization programs like the Ratnik program that they had in the mid-2010s, and so for that reason, we could assume that they probably do not have a large amount of operational nuclear weapons. On top of that, given the current financial strain caused by the war in Ukraine, we could also assume that they probably shaved more off of the nuclear maintenance budget due to diverting it to the ongoing conventional war that's going on inside of Ukraine. So I'd have to say that it's highly likely that the Russian Federation's nuclear arsenal is not really that up to spec or that operational, but once again, I'd have to be with the 45%. It only takes one to be deadly, and one nuclear hit in the United States could cause an untold amount of damage, the likes of which most people have never seen. It would create an apocalyptic situation within that regional area wherever that nuclear weapon hit. So generally,
Well, real quick, before we get off of this right here, before we round this little question out, to give you an idea of what the U.S. spends on average, we spend about $95 billion, that's with a B, billion, per year, over maintaining and modernizing our nuclear forces. So that's the delivery systems like submarines, ICBMs, etc. It's about almost actually $100 billion a year, actually. So in rubles, if you're curious what that is 7,383,110,250,000 rubles that Russia would have to come up with to properly maintain their nuclear arsenal, which is actually larger than the U.S.'s nuclear arsenal. They would need at least that to properly maintain their nuclear arsenal. So I think it's very clear that Russia does not have that kind of money, not anywhere close to it, and that's what you need to properly maintain it. That's what we do here in the U.S. to make sure that ours work, and you can see that it clearly pays off. When we launch one, it works. When Russia launches one, it doesn't work. So obviously you need that kind of money to keep it running. So I don't think Russia is maintaining their nukes. I think just by the numbers alone, that proves they're not maintaining it.
Actually, Mandy, I got to make a correction here because I just said a second ago it was $95 billion over the next 10 years. I actually just misread that. Matthew read that correctly. It's $95 billion a year. So it's actually 10% of the current U.S. military budget annually is put into the nuclear arsenal. Actually, it's the Department of Energy's budget that's put into the nuclear arsenal. But outside of that, that is still a massive amount of money. Now, let's put that into the pre-war perspective. Russia was spending $55 billion a year on their military before the invasion of Ukraine, with the same number or larger number most years than the U.S. had in the number of nuclear weapons. So with that in mind, it would actually take 200% of the Russians' annual military budget before the war in Ukraine to just maintain the nukes. And that doesn't even get to paying anyone in the military, or paying to produce new tanks, or upkeeping their current tanks, or supplying equipment and weapon systems and ammunition to their armed forces. That doesn't account any of that into the equation. It's just $95 billion a year to maintain the nukes they have. They didn't have that money before the war, and considering that right now they're estimated to be expending about $200 to $220 billion a year on their armed forces alone because of the war in Ukraine. That means that if that included nuclear expenditure costs, 50% of their current military budget, $1 in every $2, would be going to maintaining their nuclear systems, which obviously isn't happening either because the war in Ukraine has been prohibitively expensive for the Russians to fight conventionally. So with that in mind, they can't maintain any of these hardly. They just don't have the money.
Yeah, that's insane, honestly. When you really look at Russia's military budget, which is about 126 billion or so, that's Russia's total military budget, by the way. That's in US dollars, 126 billion USD for Russia's military budget. And it takes 95 billion USD simply to maintain a nuclear arsenal. They're obviously not spending that on it. So we see the test failing over and over and over again, which makes you wonder at the same time. Remember this, folks. That's the military budget they usually had to begin with. That's not the one they need to properly keep the war going. That's why they're using Ladas, donkeys, etc. on the front lines, because they don't have the money to properly buy the equipment they need to actually fund the war. So they're using every single dollar of their military budget to fight Ukraine. They're not using it to maintain anything. That clearly not. So, I mean, really, when you look at it, it's a joke. Like the U.S. spends 1/10 of their entire military budget on nuclear maintenance. It's a 1/10. That's a huge portion of our annual spending on military going straight to nukes. I didn't, in fact, know it was that high, but that's very high for maintenance just on nukes.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely high. I mean, that is wildly high. And, it's a really crazy thing, folks, when you think about it, because this is also to put this into perspective. The U.S., for the whole military, which costs us about $1 trillion US per year in discretionary spending approved by the Congress, only accounts for 3.5% of the U.S. GDP. So that includes everything, including the nuclear weapon maintenance, which costs about 10% of the military's budget, or at least defense spending, if we want to say it more technically, considering that the Department of Energy is the one that controls the nukes and maintains them. But outside of that, what's more interesting is that if we put that same figure on the Russian Federation just to maintain the nuclear weapons annually that they have in number in Russia, that would take up a whopping 5% of their national GDP just to maintain the nukes they have. So keep this into perspective, folks. The U.S. spends 3.5% of our gross domestic product on the military. It's $1 trillion a year. And out of that $1 trillion, about $100 billion of that goes into maintaining nukes. So when you put that into percentage of GDP, the U.S. expends probably 0.3% of our entire national GDP on maintaining the several thousand nukes we have. If Russia tried to do the same thing, par for par that we do, they would be expending 5% of their national GDP on just maintaining the nukes they have on paper. There's no way that they could ever afford that. And then on top of that, they have to fund the military. The entire Russian army, all 1.2 million service members of the Russian army, all the vehicles, equipment, aircraft, munitions, procurements, salaries, and so on, which would be incredibly, exorbitantly expensive to do it all. So it's completely impossible. That's why we're seeing so many failures. They can never financially conduct a actual maintenance of their nuclear arsenal in any feasible means. It's entirely out of their pocketbook. They could just never do it. And that's why we keep seeing that even their more advanced nuclear weapon systems, like the Avangard, are also suffering critical failures as well, along with every other nuclear weapon system that they've made in the modern day, and even the Soviet-era ones that generally are tried-true workhorses of the nuclear field. Even they are failing just due to the complete lack of maintenance that's being seen on them, because there's no money to pay anyone to do the maintenance or to pay for the equipment and materials and parts needed to continue to maintain these missiles. So I'd highly
honestly, the best way you could make an analogy to it is, occasionally you'll see a car that someone does not maintain, driving on the roads, for example. Sometimes it's older cars, sometimes it's somewhat semi-newer cars, but some people refuse to put oil in their engine. For whatever reason, some people drive the roads with literal white smoke coming out the tailpipe all the time, just because they're either lazy or maybe they've had hard times possibly as well. But they'll drive down the road with the white smoke coming out the back, and the engine's just crying out for help. It's just crying out for help. And eventually it gives out. The poor thing just ends up like a Hulk on the side of the road because it literally got ruined because it didn't put oil in it. That's basically what Russia's nukes are. It's the jalopy with no oil in it at this point. And that Hulk is about to sit right there in the silos and probably not be able to work at all if they can't maintain it, which I don't see any situation situation where they can actually end up finding the money to maintain it. I think it's pretty much screwed.
Oh yeah, I would assume so. I think that they're absolutely screwed as far as the nuclear arsenal goes, which we kind of already know. Like we already knew that well, because I'll show you all a picture. Let's see, Russian sub pens in the 90s. Let me go get a picture of this for y'all, because I want to show y'all this, because this is something that a lot of people, they don't know. This is a little part of history that a lot of people completely gloss over and they don't talk about. When the Soviet Union collapsed back in the 90s, most of the funding and pretty much the entire government apparatus that kept everything running had completely fallen apart. So the Russians, let's see, let me type this in. Let me get a better picture. Russian sub graveyard, 1990s. Let me see if I can find this here really quickly. Dang, they try and whitewash the pictures even off of Google. That's actually quite interesting. This is probably one of the better ones that I could find, possibly, sort of. So we'll, oh no, here we are. Here it is. So back in the 90s, when the Russians were a brand new country and the Soviet Union had just collapsed, this is what a lot of Russian submarine pens actually looked like. It's this right here. Now, all of these are actually nuclear-powered submarines, or diesel electrics. And what was happening was that Russia had so little money, they would leave these submarines running and just sit them there, and they'd rot. And it was scaring the hell out of everyone in the world, because in the United States, we were saying, well, if they keep doing that, one of these are eventually going to corrode, and nuclear contaminant, radioactive contamination, is just going to start leaking from the active reactors in these subs out into the open sea. And that could cause huge amounts of contamination. It's practically like having a Chernobyl in the sea, indefinitely, and it would be incredibly hard to deal with. So what we did back in the day, back in the 90s, something a lot of people don't know about, we paid the Russian government money. The U.S. would shovel them money, so that way the Russians would allow us to go into Russia and dismantle their nuclear submarines that they weren't able to maintain, and also some of their nuclear weapons as well, so that way they wouldn't spontaneously explode or start leaking radioactive contamination into the world seas. People don't really know about that, and people don't really remember that. A lot of people don't even remember that that was the whole Russian military. It wasn't just anything that was nuclear-related. The whole Russian army was like that throughout the entirety of the 90s. When Putin came into power, they were still like that well on into the middle of the 2000s. But around the time right before the invasion of Georgia in 2008, the Russian Federation started to put a lot more money into the military compared to what they were doing, which was basically nothing. They finally started to put a little bit of something into the military. And then, after the beginning of the 2010s, really around the time right after the invasion of Ukraine, the original one in 2014, the Russians started a modernization program of the armed forces. This boosted the Russian military budget up to around $50 to $60 billion a year, and that was when we started to see all of the Wunderwaffe of the Russian Federation appear in the modern day, like the T-14 Armata and several other weapon systems, which barely have ever seen the light of day because it was well beyond Russia's means or abilities to even try and make them. But that's generally the situation that Russia has come from. It's not one of greatness. I mean, the Soviet Union was quite a formidable military force on land, sea, and air to the United States and the rest of the Western world throughout the entirety of the Cold War. But Russia is living in the shadow of a dying state, and is also dying as a result of that corpse that they've been living in for a couple of decades rotting on top of them. And these nuclear weapons failures are clearly showing that that corpse is almost rotted down to the bone at this point. There's really not a lot left of it, and the Russians are still trying to survive within it, but they don't have that much time. And the war in Ukraine is really killing off the Russian state, which is also dying within the corpse of an already failed state. So with that, we are going to be moving on from all that news, because while we've been talking about corpses and whatnot, the Russians are kind of sealing their fate at this point as far as remaining a corpse or becoming one here in the future, as the Russian government has stated today that they refuse to even acknowledge the Ukrainian government as a legitimate one. According to Dmitry Medvedev, who is the senior advisor to the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, so holding a somewhat significant position within Russia, and generally is considered to be the anger translator of Putin, allowing Putin to say stuff he wouldn't be able to say normally through diplomatic channels, has said the following today. And I'm going to read it verbatim. The corrupt government surrounding the expired Kiev clown has crumbled. He may still be sitting in office, spewing cocaine from his nose, but he won't be the one who signs the peace treaty. The buffoon is illegitimate. The collapse of his system is inevitable. I think he got it wrong. You don't spew cocaine from your nose. Hot Dog Man can do that party trick, but most other people can't. You actually snort it. Like, that's the real term there. I think he's getting a little confused there. But outside of that, this seems to be stating, at least from the Russian government, they aren't even willing to negotiate with the Ukrainians because they consider the Ukrainians to be an illegitimate state. So the whole idea that the US had of getting Ukraine and Russia to sit down at the table and agree to a peace deal once again can't happen because we've made it back to the old Russian playbook once they get to the part where they might actually have to be forced into a peace treaty talk, to where they just then state that the entire Ukrainian government is illegitimate, so they won't even talk to them, and then that pretty much kills any attempt at a peace then, because they won't even talk to the people that they're at war with. So, quite clearly, Medvedev is laying out the groundwork now for the Russians to completely refuse the peace. We also heard, additionally, from the Kremlin, that according to Kremlin spokespersons, we assume we're currently negotiating with only the United States, not Ukraine, the Europeans, or anyone else. So the Russians are making it wildly clear at this point that they are not even willing to talk to the Ukrainians, and they're not going to talk to the Ukrainians. And they're assuming that they're talking to the United States alone and alone only, and will not be talking to anyone else inside of Europe, even the involved party in the conflict, which is the Ukrainians. This has made a lot of people once again see that the wool's been pulled over the US's eyes again for the 9th time this year, that the Russians are, of course, not willing to negotiate and are operating in bad faith to only try and prolong the inevitable, which is a possible increase of US support to Ukraine, which will make it a lot more difficult for the Russians to try and fight the war on the ground and eventually try and win against the state of Ukraine, which is already proving to be incredibly difficult with the little bit of support the Ukraine is getting from the international world. Still, a lot of people have been talking about this statement from the Russian Federation's government, both through Medvedev and official Russian sources from the Kremlin. And what are people thinking about this, Matthew? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So right now, Russian officials are openly calling for the collapse of Ukraine's government. And they're once again repeating the lie that Zelensky is illegitimate and claiming that he's not the real leader of Ukraine, even though he's literally elected as leader of Ukraine. So what are your thoughts? 69% said
Nice.
It's just normal Russian propaganda. Nice. 23% said Russia would use the USA to collapse Ukraine, and only 4% said Russia will collapse Zelensky's government through their own means. So clearly, in my opinion, Russia is trying to change the strategy. They're going from trying to win on the battlefield to they're quickly pivoting to try to collapse Zelensky's government because, as most people are aware, right now there is a bit of a scandal going on where one individual has just resigned that's close to Zelensky under allegations of corruption. But once again, that's nothing new for most people. Ukraine does have a corruption problem. That's nothing new. And Zelensky's been trying to weed that out. And I think it's proof that Zelensky is trying to weed it out by the fact that the guy just resigned that was alleged to have maybe had some misbehavior. I'm not really sure of the exact proof they have, but he's alleged to have some misbehavior. So he resigned. He's left. So right now it appears that maybe Ukraine has it all under control, but it looks like Russia is now going to try to use that to their advantage and say, oh, look, it's the criminal regime like we've been saying the whole time. Totally ignoring the fact that Putin literally operates a criminal regime himself, and everybody around Putin pretty much just fleeces the whole operation. So I would say that Russia is going to try to use the United States to collapse Ukraine. They're going to try to sell this idea to the United States that because there's an individual that was perhaps involved in something illicit inside of Ukraine, that means the entire government in Ukraine is crooked. That's what they're going to try to say about Zelensky, and I think the U.S. is going to try to fall for it, to be honest. And I'm love to see where that goes. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it is generally just normal Russian propaganda that's going on at this point. And also on top of that, the Russian government has claimed throughout the entire war that the Zelensky government is an illegitimate government from the top down, including the entirety of the Verkhovna Rada, which is the Ukrainian version of the Congress. They've been stating that for the entirety of the war. And anytime a peace deal has been attempted to talk about, their first effort is, we will talk about it, but only on unconditional terms. And then once unconditional terms might be even close to being accepted by the Russians, they then go to the next trick, which is to state, we're not talking to the Ukrainians anyways because they're an illegitimate government. And then that kills the talks completely. This has been seen about 5 times now throughout the entirety of the war in all seriousness. It's nothing new. But with the whole deal with what's going on inside of Ukraine, which I'll actually cover here as a part of this poll, Andriy Yermak, who is the chief of staff of the Ukrainian government, has actually been, well, one, he resigned earlier this morning, and secondly, the president of Ukraine signed presidential decree number 868 this morning, which also dismissed Andriy Yermak from his official positions within the Ukrainian government. This is because of alleged corruption scandals that have been ongoing, where it's believed that that Andriy Yermak may be involved in some sort of embezzling operation or something similar involving the Ukrainian armed forces. This is something that isn't entirely new. Corruption has been an issue within the state of Ukraine, much like the Russian Federation, since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. However, one thing I have to say is that the Russians are trying to lean into this and act like it's a huge ordeal. But here's my thing. Now, Andriy Yermak is the first Ukrainian official that I've heard of in a hot minute, about maybe a year or over a year, that has resigned or been dismissed, or has had charges pressed against him, one of the three, because of alleged corruption scandals. Now, let's look at the Russian Federation. How many generals within the last year have been arrested on corruption charges? How many of them have been removed from their position because of corruption charges? How many Russian officials, Russian oligarchs, and so on have been killed throughout the year because they possibly, their loyalties were either questionable to the Russian government or they openly went against the Russian government? Many of y'all wouldn't even be able to count them on one hand. It's been dozens over this year alone. Like, for example, let's think of this. Ivan Popov, who was the commander of the 6th Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation, is currently imprisoned for 10 years in Russia because of his alleged involvement in corruption scandals that involve the entirety of the 6th Combined Arms Army. The other general who was in charge of building the cathedral at the Moscow Military Park right out here. Let me show you all this cathedral to remind you all this. This was built with Russian military budgetary funds. This cathedral right here. He's alleged to have embezzled money through the construction of it, and he is also in prison right now for about 10 years. Putin, who has never been a businessman or an oligarch, has a personal net worth that is approximated to be around $200 billion. He's been a bureaucrat his entire life, a paper pusher, or a government official. And it's very seldom rare, if not impossible, to get a net worth of $200 billion off of honest dealings being a government official or a politician. That's quite difficult. I mean, that's insider trading right there that makes some U.S. Congress members blush and green with envy because they wish they could do that. That's corruption at a whole other level.
Yeah.
And when you put that into comparison with the Ukrainians, it's a little bit hard to say that we're backing the wrong dog in this fight when, sure, the Ukrainians clearly do have corruption, if we're arguing there, but the Russians do sure have a far greater deal of it. And also, I gotta say this, looking inwards a little bit, doesn't the United States have a great deal of corruption that's in the wide open as well? I mean, you know, like speaking of
Every government's corrupt. Like every government in 2025 is corrupt. And name a government around the world that doesn't have, honestly, I'm just going to say how it is, widespread corruption in it. I'm not trying to make excuses for Ukraine because Ukraine has a corruption problem. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't. But name a government anywhere that is not corrupt as hell these days. I mean, government's just out for themselves like these days, and it's not unique to one system. It's everybody these days. Everybody's trying to fleece it. That I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, like, think about it. Let me bring this out to all of y'all. All of the people in the United States who have been under prosecution recently for taking large sums of money from foreign governments, people who were involved in insider trading, people who were involved in screwing over their constituents for a quick buck because of the lobbyists. Think about all that corruption that exists within the United States. And it's a prevalent thing. Everyone knows about it here. I mean, nobody lies about it. We all know that that exists. It's just that some people like to skim over the truth that everyone's involved in that, and they might like to make it sound like only one party or the other is involved in those sorts of shady actions. So when we think about that, on the corruption side of things, so a Ukrainian official ended up having some corruption charges possibly brought up against him, or he's about to have them brought up against him, and he resigned or was dismissed one way or the other because of that. How many U.S. officials have had to resign their positions, like, for example, the former mayor of New York City because of such allegations and prosecutions, or multiple other people who have been in the Congress recently, for that matter? Quite a lot. So if we're going to sit here and say, "Oh, we can't support the Ukrainians because they don't have lily white hands that have that are they actually have dirt on their hands. There's a little bit of corruption there." Isn't that a little bit hypocritical to say, especially considering the amount of prevalent and rife corruption that everyone in the United States knows goes on in our government on a day-to-day? But also, I'm going to break it down to everyone in a more basic way. This is really where the argument lies. That argument about the Ukrainians are corrupt and so we shouldn't support them is a little bit goofy. Because we're not Ukrainians. We're Americans. So our internal corruption issues are our issue. Here in America, and for our allies inside the United Kingdom and France and Germany, their domestic corruption issues are their concern. But for the United States on a foreign policy stage, the corruption issues and the internal strife that exists within our allied nations doesn't really concern us at all. We're not the citizens of that country. Let me remind you all this. What was South Korea in the Korean War? It was a dictatorship. And what was it all the way up until about 1985? It was a military dictatorship. Thousands of people were killed by the South Korean government over those decades for going up against a dictator. Multiple military coups were conducted. Syngman Rhee, Park Chung-hee, all of these different leaders, they didn't come to power from democratic elections. They came up to power because of military uprisings and coups that they were in charge of, and the people would pay for that in blood. And yet we supported South Korea every day of the week. Who in the world was Taiwan back in the day? Oh, what was it? I think it was a dictatorship, if I'm not mistaken. I believe the Republic of China was led by Chiang Kai-shek, who was the dictator of the Republic of China, and when they lost the Chinese Civil War, he went and hid on that island. And for the next 10 years after that, he conducted what was called the White Terror, and ended up killing about 10,000 Taiwanese people because they were believed to have loyalties that were not aligned with the Republic of China's government. Outright had them shot in the streets. And yet we still supported the Taiwanese, and eventually, through their exposure to us, a lot of their corruption issues have disappeared, and they're generally a functioning democratic society. So, when we look back in the past, the United States has had no oh, by the way, I forgot to mention one that doesn't even exist now, South Vietnam. Y'all know that South Vietnam wasn't a dictatorship, right? It was a corrupt, well, actually, it wasn't a democracy, it was a corrupt dictatorship at the time. The entire time we were at war in Vietnam, the South Vietnamese government was a dictatorship, and had the tendency to conduct some pretty heinous actions within southern Vietnam. And yet we still supported them, even after we left in 1973 and up until their collapse in 1975. We still were there. So why in the world is this morality now appearing in American diplomacy and American foreign policy when it's never existed in the past, and even when it didn't exist in the past because we were simply trying to support our interest primarily, it still came around in the end to not only be beneficial to us, but beneficial to the people that we were involved in supporting at the time. That's really more so the argument.
And also, it's like kind of like you're saying, but to break it down even more simple than that, we're supporting Ukraine because, and people don't like to hear this, it sounds crude, but we're supporting Ukraine and honestly using Ukraine to wear the Russians down, to wear down their military stockpiles, so that way they can't attack NATO, or at least they'll have a very hard time trying to attack NATO. And also, it gives us a buffer in between the NATO alliance and the Russian Federation. It gives us a small buffer in between Russia and those two factions there. So that's what we're using them for. Now, at the same time, me personally as a person, I care about the Ukrainian people and the civilians because I don't like to see people suffer. So I care about the civilians. But from a geopolitical sense, the United States is 100% using Ukraine to destroy Russia in a sense. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no problem with it. I think that serves the U.S. national interests. But at the same time, though, we're not going to get all caught up in, is Ukraine's government perfect? Or is it not perfect? Do they have a guy that might be corrupt? Or do they have a guy that might not be corrupt? Honestly, that's their problem. If they want to solve their corruption problem, go right ahead. But we need them to fight the Russians to wear the Russians down. And that's purely it. And outside of that, it's up to them to solve it. It's not our problem.
And also, I saw someone say in the chat, Mark Ryan say, you give hundreds of billions of dollars of aid to a foreign nation. Obviously, corruption is a concern. We didn't give hundreds of billions of dollars in raw cash to them. We didn't just fly over pallets of cash. We gave them guns. Lots of guns. Tons of them. An incredible number of them. I would say it's still not enough, but quite a decent amount. And they used those to blast away a couple of Russians. Now, in my opinion, when we take the monetary value and put it into a physical object like a howitzer, and they blast a howitzer at the Russians and wipe out a squad of them, I'd say that's actually a pretty fair investment. Especially considering that the Russians are an open enemy of the United States. We're pretty much letting the Ukrainians take care of a problem for us before it becomes a problem. That's a pretty nice way of doing things. Now, whether those people have a corruption issue or not, that's not really the issue. The question is, Are they blasting away at the Russians? And the answer is yes. So I don't really care, honestly, if they have corruption issues or not. If they are willing to take care of our common enemy for us, then we'll let them have at it. I mean, I gotta say this really quickly for some folks, because this is where I find a little bit of a disconnect. We have issues with Ukraine's corruption, but we don't have any issues with Netanyahu's ongoing prosecution within the Israeli courts for a very similar sort of an issue. We have no problem with that. Even call him a war hero sometimes here in the United States. No issues there. But when it comes to Ukraine, they have to have lily white hands when it comes to corruption. Otherwise, we can't support them. Is anyone seeing kind of a little bit of a difference there?
And also, when is the U.S. going to understand, the current U.S. Leadership? When are they going to understand that Russia is not our friend? Russia will always be the enemy of the United States. There's just a ideological difference between our two countries that simply will not coexist peacefully. At least under the current leadership, it definitely won't. Maybe in the future it might, but for right now, in the near future, it's not going to coexist peacefully. So one of us is going to have to win, either Russia or the United States. And as an American, I am rooting for our country to win. So unless maybe people are stupid, as they love to call reporters stupid, maybe our leaders might be a little bit on the stupid side. Russia is not our friend. So when you go and see Ukraine fighting Russia, you give Ukraine support. We're not there trying to nitpick their country. We're trying to support Ukraine to fight Russia, to wear Russia down and destroy their country. And maybe, hopefully down the road, it'll result in the ousting of a bastard dictator known as Vladimir Putin. Maybe so. But until the U.S. understands that we are not friends with Russia, then we are not having our ducks in a line right now. We are not on the same page with our European allies. Our European allies understand what we're supposed to be doing, and that's why they're supporting Ukraine. But the U.S. is not understanding what we're supposed to be doing. I don't know why, because it seems like it's pretty blatantly obvious. Some people are saying in the chat, this isn't a proxy war. Let's be honest, folks. It is a proxy war. This is a proxy war. The U.S. is is helping Ukraine fight the Russians. That's what we're doing here. If it wasn't for that, I doubt the U.S. would be supporting Ukraine, to be perfectly honest, because it has to suit our interests in order for us to spend money on weapons. And once again, to dispel the bots in the chat, we are not sending Ukraine pallets of cash. That is not happening. That's just bullcrap that's been made up by the Russians. We're sending them weapons, and we quantify that in money values. The value of that weapons that we're sending to Ukraine, that's how we quantify it in money. So when we say that we spent $100 billion on Ukraine, that doesn't mean we sent them $100 billion in pallets of cash. It means we sent them $100 billion in equivalent equipment. That's what that means. And usually it's old equipment that we were going to retire anyway. So it's just, to me, it seems like common sense, but to some, it just seems like it's not.
And also, I see someone saying, if you can land men on the moon, I imagine you can give aid with transparency that is immune to corruption. Oh, you mean like the U.S. Army, right? The U.S. Army that was just currently embroiled over the past year in a couple of corruption scandals where people would end up slipping a couple of guns here or there out of an armory. You mean that kind of corruption, right? The one that we can take care of here in the States as well. I don't think you know this, but we don't live in a utopia. And there are some bad eggs in the U.S. military that'll take advantage of their position as quartermasters as well. Very rarely do they get away with it, but they'll try to make a little bit of a buck here and there off of selling a couple of weapons and a bit of ammo from an armory. It happens. And I don't know how in the world we're expected to be able to stop the Ukrainians in a whole other country from having any corrupt dealings with stuff we give them when we can't even stop some quartermasters in the U.S. Army from doing the very same thing. Because if y'all haven't listened to the news recently, there's been 2 minor instances where some Army quartermasters here in America have been taking munitions or guns or any other form of equipment and taking them out of the armory and trying to sell them for cash. Hell, there was actually 2 U.S. Navy sailors involved in a little while ago in selling top secrets to the Chinese of a U.S. aircraft carrier for $10,000 per secret. Now, if we can't take care of that kind of corruption or those kinds of issues, how in the world are we expected to stop the Ukrainians from here and there having a corruption issue because of some of their bad eggs as well? Bad eggs are bad eggs. You have to deal with them when they rise up, but acting like we have to burn the bridge because there's a bad egg on the other side, well, that's just cutting off our nose to spite our face at that point. But anyway,
we're going to sell our secrets for $10,000. Like, that was the amount.
Yeah, $10,000 per secret. That's what the Chinese gave him as an offer. That's kind of raw.
That's pretty
really.
Damn cheap. Yeah, that's a raw deal. I mean, damn. Like, obviously, I don't endorse selling secrets. Those bastards ought to go to jail if they're guilty. But at the same time, though, it's like $10,000. You're going to give up our secrets for $10,000? Like, I would have thought it would have been like $1 million or a few million or something like that. $10,000. I mean, what the hell? It's like giving it up for a honey bun.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like $10,000 per secret. I mean, that's and apparently they gave a couple of them to the Chinese. I think each of them got like 20,000 apiece. So they each individually gave at least 4 secrets total between the two of them to the Chinese for 20,000 bucks each. So
Dirty,
yeah,
absolutely dirty.
yeah, so crazy stuff right there, but that's how it works. And but anyways, with that, before we get on into the rest of our news for the night, because we still have a good amount to go, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat before we move on, so that way we can have a bit of a halftime here on the show. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat question of the night, this one goes to Xanderman, and he puts in a very generous $100 support. And thank you very much, Xanderman, for that very generous support, by the way. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And he said, hit that like, peoples, hit that like.
Hey, and hit the like button, folks, and a massive, humongous thanks to you so much for that unbelievable support, Sanderman, because that was a humongous bit of support that came in right at the beginning of the stream, and I gotta say, we thank you, everyone, massively for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible on a day-to-day. Viewership is a little bit lower today. I noticed, most likely because of Black Friday is what we're assuming. But it's still great to know that the die-hard fans of the LSA are always here with us, always enjoying the news from the channel, and always considered to be their primary source of news. The rest of everyone else right now, they're getting a sick deal on Black Friday, which honestly, I respect the grind. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the incredible support, Xanderman, because folks like you make it possible for our channel to see the light of day tomorrow. So a huge thanks to you once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here also goes to Xanderman. He puts in a second $100 support, and a huge shout out to Xanderman for bankrolling the channel big league, and we do appreciate that. And he said, go get that humidifier, Chief. As someone who moved from the Gulf Coast to Minnesota, it will help.
Man, I gotta tell y'all, folks, Matthew does need a humidifier possibly, because I think he's still dealing with like the dry throat. But I'll tell y'all something. I did not know this, man. Are you okay with me talking about like the hand thing?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind then. But I'll tell you, Matthew does need a humidifier. I'll say that. But still, a massive thanks to you so much once again for that humongous support and helping this channel to keep rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to possibly get a humidifier. We wouldn't be able to keep the lights on. Hell, we wouldn't be able to keep the heater on. It's getting quite cold out here. It's getting into like the 30s every day, or the 40s at least. And that's starting to get a little chilly, even for me. And you know what's crazy, folks, is that every time we go outside, I'll be like, yeah, it's not too cold. And then about 10 minutes later, I'm like, damn, it's actually freezing out here. Like, it's very cold. And it really doesn't, you don't realize it until it hits you. But still, I hope that does address that the best we can. Humongous thanks to you once again for the humidifier fund and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I gotta say, Minnesota. What did you move up to Minnesota for, all the way from the Gulf Coast? That's a far ways up there. That's up in the snowlands, where it snows humongously throughout that part of the year. And that's actually iron mining land, too. That's where they get all of those little pellets from. I forgot the name of them, but it's a certain kind of ore that they mine, but they turn it into pellets. And I cannot think of the name of the pellets. But anyways, a big thanks to you so much once again for the unbelievably massive support and helping this channel to keep running, because folks like you do make this show a reality every day and make humidifiers a possibility. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, and this one goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, a longtime channel legend, by the way. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that generous $100 support as well. And we do appreciate that. And thank you very much for being a longtime channel legend. And Hokey said, on a very serious note, he said, can we get a 10-second moment of silence for Sarah Beckstrom?
And I thank you so much for the massive support. And I would agree. Yes, I would say that we can. And so we'll do that little 10-second moment of silence right now. And I got to say that it's an incredibly unfortunate thing to hear that Sarah Beckstrom, which was one of the National Guard's members involved in the firefight that happened in Washington, D.C. between the National Guard and the gunman, ended up dying, unfortunately. She was a member of the West Virginia National Guard, and apparently was one of the guardsmen out of the two that were wounded that ended up, unfortunately, succumbing to her injuries in hospital over the time that we were on Thanksgiving break yesterday. Very unfortunate thing to hear about. And it's a very sad thing to know that citizens like that who were serving the republic can end up getting killed by vicious gunmen in the streets of Washington, D.C., that apparently must have been deranged or must have had some form of sinister mind behind them. I don't know which. But one thing I would say is that those sorts of attacks against the soldier citizenry of the republic should always be treated with the most severe punishments, either life imprisonment or the death penalty, one or the other. There has to be an example made so that way such actions will be heavily deterred in the future. And not only that, it's the mere principle of the fact that it was actually a uniformed service member or a uniformed civil servant, one or the other, that ended up being killed in such a horrific way right before a major holiday, nonetheless. But anyways,
What's messed up is the suspect who's alleged, and we want to emphasize that, by the way, because in America everybody's innocent until proven guilty. But once again, if he's guilty, then the sentence should be very, very harsh, but to say the least. But what's interesting is that guy was allegedly a part of a Zero unit, which apparently worked very close with the CIA during the war in Afghanistan, which is very fascinating with that. So he was not just someone who worked with America; he was someone who worked at the very closest level, apparently, with the United States, and was a part of a strike force, basically, in Kandahar.
yeah, it's an interesting thing. I heard that as well. And he was actually brought over in a special visa program that was given to informants and people inside of Afghanistan who worked incredibly close with the U.S. government while we were there. For people like this is of course something that's attempting to be politicized these days, but we've done that everywhere. It's nothing new. When we were leaving Vietnam, we brought a load of people from South Vietnam, especially after the 1973 to 1975 second phase of the Civil War started between the two, and the North Vietnamese were winning. We brought over tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Vietnamese citizens from South Vietnam who had been closely affiliated or serving with the United States, because it's not a good example to reward loyalty in foreign countries to the U.S. government by leaving them behind to get killed by the government that'll take charge. So generally, this is something that fairly normally happens, at least bringing these people over after it's clear that the nation that we were supporting is collapsing. A little bit wild, though, that would happen. Usually you don't hear of stories like that from people we bring over from these foreign countries that get these sorts of visas because of their cooperation with the U.S. government. But nevertheless, an example has to be made out of this, in my honest opinion. If that person is the person who is responsible, at the moment he's innocent until proven guilty, but if they have enough irrefutable evidence that they're able to convict him in court, I would say that the sentence should be one of the most strongest that could possibly be given. Either consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, or the death penalty, whichever one that court would find appropriate, but a severe one nonetheless. Either way that they would prefer. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A massive thanks to you once again for the humongous support, Hokey Redneck, and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to keep this channel running and make this thing possible, so that way we can cover the news each and every single day. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, folks, we're actually going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have for the night, which is quite significant, to say the least. Moving us on out of Eastern Europe for a minute and on out into the United States, we have been able to hear of some larger developments within Washington, D.C., as a possible meeting between Nicolas Maduro, or Captain Crack Sparrow, and the President of the United States is going to be possible within the next week or two. This is even as the United States continues to threaten military action against Venezuela, with the President of the United States once again reiterating that military strikes against the nation could be happening soon. For some reason, we're still going to try and talk to Captain Crack Sparrow and his band of 40 thieves. I don't know why, but it's at least alleged that that could be happening. Meanwhile, China is now getting their dog involved in the fight and is urging the U.S. to remove illegal unilateral sanctions against Venezuela. That was according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning, pictured here. The Chinese are openly getting their dog involved in the fight, at least on the diplomatic level in this game, and are making it quite clear that they are backing the Venezuelan side and not trying to sit out inactively. This is once again making it fairly clear at the moment that if we walk away from this situation, China and Russia are going to try and fortify and support Venezuela, to where if we try and return to the situation later, it's going to be a far more difficult one to deal with. So at this moment, we're largely forced into the situation where we have to respond and we have to take action. Otherwise, this can end up boding us poorly on in the future if we have to revisit the situation and deal with it then. So once again, making it incredibly clear, there are larger powers at play here rather than just the U.S. and Venezuela. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that a Ukrainian delegation is going to be coming to the United States next week for further discussions on the peace plan that has been presented by the United States, which I don't really understand because there really isn't a lot to talk about. The Russians are not willing to talk, so I don't know what we're really trying to iron out. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Defense has also made a statement today on Twitter and has stated, "We've only just begun to kill narco-terrorists." Now, I gotta say, like, I just have to say this. I'm not trying to get political here and nitpick on everything, but I thought that the administration was saying with the war in Ukraine, it was time to stop the killing because killing's bad, but then we're going to say that we're killing people in the Caribbean just outright. Like, I just gotta say, like, isn't the messaging a little bit uneven here? I mean, it's almost like we're taking glee in the fact that we're killing these people. And it's like, yeah, they're like, if they are narco-terrorists, they are, and so dispatching them is a way of dealing with them, I suppose. But at the same time, it's like, if we're saying at one hand that killing is wrong and people are dying in Ukraine every day, I mean, why in the world are we going to make it out that we're killing narco-terrorists with glee down in the Eastern Caribbean instead of it just being a act to defend the United States? An unfortunate one nonetheless, but one we have to take. Like, the messaging is a little inconsistent.
That guy is tone deaf as hell. Like, what a crude way to say that, too. It's like, now, obviously, when you get involved in military actions, most times people end up dying. This is part of it. But at the same time, though, we don't ever want to get to a point as a nation where we take pride or joy in that or something, because saying that, oh, well, we've only begun to wipe these people out. It's like, well, what is that really a great thing to say? It's like, yes, that's what's happening, but should you really say that? It's like it's that whole macho man act, like the whole macho thing, like, oh, we're going to show them, we're going to drag them through the dirt. It's like, come on now. That used to be like, maybe like something that teenagers would act like, oh yeah, I'm tough. You're a grown man. Like, cut the shit out.
Also, I see some people saying, let's see, nah, drugs are killing us. Well, yeah, but at the same time, we don't say that to the Ukrainians. Like, no one uses that as a logical argument in support of the Ukraine war. The Russians are killing Ukrainians. So why in the world is it wrong for them to fight the Russians and wipe out their armed forces and kill Russians in the thousands every day that are invading their country? But that's wrong, but when we do it, it's 100% justified. There's got it. Like, I'm like, you can go with either one and run with it at the end of the day, but you got to pick one and stick with it. Like, either killing people is terrible all across the board, so this is an unfortunate but necessary action we're taking down there, or it's all justified and the gates of hell are let loose and we let the dogs of war run. It's one or the other. Like, you can't do both at the same time. It's just very annoying to look at that because, it's like this. War is terrible and corruption is bad, and that's why we can't support Ukraine, but we'll completely overlook Israel's corruption and give them everything without question. Then, at the same time, killing is terrible in Ukraine, and that's just got to stop because killing is wrong no matter what the point is. But when it comes to the U.S. fighting drug cartels, we can bomb the shit out of them and kill them all day, and then it's a great, wonderful thing, and we even take leave in the fact that we're killing them. It's like, it's the mixed messaging involved there. There has to be some sort of uniform messaging, actions, or decision-making process, or at least some sort of a logical endpoint to say why one's different than the other, but none of that's ever given.
Yeah, but also at the same time, though, while I have an issue with the messaging that's being said right now, at the same time, though, I see some people saying what's happening is illegal. Not really illegal. It's not really illegal because here's the thing. Once the United States labels a group a terrorist organization, that pretty much opens the floodgates for military action. It's something that you can disagree with. I understand why some people may think, oh, well, that's not great because, we need to have due process, etc. But the problem is, though, that is the way it works. If a group is labeled a terror organization, then the U.S. can take action to eliminate and nullify that threat. And, these strikes that we're seeing right here would technically fall under that criteria. So it's not illegal. It's easy to say something's illegal, but in reality, though, it's not. So the part that might be illegal, though, and I say might because it's not proven, is if some of these people that are being struck on these boats are not actually a part of that terror group or they're not narco-terrorists, well, then they just eliminated somebody and killed somebody that was innocent. That is a a crime. That is a war crime. But if until we get evidence that someone was on a boat that was not a narco-terrorist, then we can't say it's illegal.
And also, I have to clarify this because apparently, folks saying that the messaging in multiple different fronts is inconsistent is apparently a political statement to people. I have to agree with Enforcer Matt. There is nothing illegal about striking terrorist groups at sea. We never gave the Houthis any due process, ever. We went down there and bombed the hell out of them. We killed some of their top officials when we were conducting the airstrikes in the prior administration and the current one. We never went in there and arrested anyone and brought them to a U.S. court and held them on trial. That never happened. They're a terrorist group. They're offered no protections. Same with the cartels. Once they're declared terrorist groups, they're offered no protections. Doesn't mean that we have to take glee in wiping them out. It's business. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting a little bit confused here. This is what we do around the world, whether people are living or dying. It's a part of our sphere of influence is business. It's nothing to really take too much glee in, unless you're actively involved in something major and you're having to try and keep some morale up to keep everyone rolling along day by day because it's a grueling slug fest or something along those lines. That's the only time that you really can try and keep some spirits up. Beyond that, it's just business. I mean, we're not killing narco terrorists because we get our rocks off on blasting away their boats. If we're doing anything against them, we're just doing it to protect U.S. sovereign interests or to protect the citizenry. There's some pride to be taken in the protection of the citizenry, but not glee of killing other people. That's generally how it works. Like, for example, in the Ukraine, it's business. We support the Ukrainians because we want to defeat the Russians. For the Ukrainians, they take glee in it. The Russians are invading their country. It's a slugging to the finish. They've got to try and survive, so they have to be able to take some glee in it and have some morale to get on through it. But generally, it's something that you got to be a little bit consistent with the messaging in because, it's really hard, folks. Like, if the administration said that killing is wrong across the board, and we really hate what we're doing in the Caribbean, but it's necessary, and then they said killing's wrong in Ukraine, the messaging is consistent across the board at that point. It's like, well, it's like they have a set line of ideals that they're following, but killing's wrong in Ukraine, but killing in the Caribbean is completely fine, and in fact, it's great. Like, that's what I'm having the issue with. It's not illegal what they're doing down there, but at the same time, it's like the messaging's got to be consistent at some point across the board, so that way we have at least an idea that they all are on the same page, or at least are operating with the same mindset in different areas of the world. But moving
Although
on,
people do make a fair point, though, real quick to round this out. People do make a fair point when they say, well, there's no proof that every single individual on all of these alleged narco boats is actually a narco terrorist. I do agree with that, by the way. Just because I'm explaining the legality of the situation does not mean I necessarily agree with it. I'm simply saying what I believe to be the law is. So, the U.S. has not been very transparent about the intel they have leading to these strikes. They've not been very transparent with that, and they still are not providing the information, oddly enough. And we've even heard that one individual apparently survived one of these strikes. Then they were released and let go. So apparently they weren't charged with anything, which makes some people wonder, were they about to just take out somebody and eliminate somebody that was innocent, and that's why he was let go? So I understand why people were taking issue with it, because it does seem very, very odd with the way they're targeting people. But I just have an issue with the messaging personally.
I would have to say I would agree with that. But outside of that, getting back on into the Venezuelan news, we did hear in Trinidad and Tobago that the U.S. is installing radar systems within the country to monitor air activity around the area, clearly showing they're preparing the airspace for air operations. And additionally, we also saw that Maduro's private jet was seen, well, more so his presidential plane or private jet, it's an A319, was seen near the Santa Elena National Airport in a remote location near the border with Brazil. A lot of people are wondering what's up with that one. A lot of people are like, now, why in the world would it ever go towards Brazil, and especially in a remote location like this? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So right now we're seeing Maduro's plane is apparently gone right to the border with Brazil, near a Venezuelan military base in the southern part of the country. So he's very close to apparently jumping, or at least his plane is, jumping right out of Venezuela's borders. So is Maduro about to flee? That's the question. 43% said yes, he's about to flee the country, while 25% said no, he's simply going to a secure area in case the U.S. attacks. And 20% said he likely wasn't even on the plane. And that's what we don't know right now. His plane went down there to the Brazilian border, but we don't know if Maduro was actually on that plane or not. He could have been letting someone borrow his plane, or it could be that maybe he was on it and he was getting away from Caracas, because that's going to be the main place the U.S. is striking. That could be the case as well. So I'm going to say that If Maduro was on the plane, just sort of hedging it this way, if Maduro was on the plane, then I would say yes. It looks like he's about to jump out of Venezuela and flee to a different country. But if he wasn't on the plane, though, then I would say it just probably someone borrowing the jet. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm a little bit unsure. We don't know if Maduro was on board or not to really make a clear discernment, at least in my opinion, as to exactly what's happening. So I would have to say I'm a little bit unsure at the moment, to be entirely honest with you all. But I also saw some people saying, well, this and that and the whole thing about what's going on in the Caribbean. I'll tell you all how I would have done it if I was the president to build up a perfect case. One, we declare them terrorist groups, and then we start to conduct some sorts of searches on these vessels out there in the Caribbean. We clearly seize contraband. We arrest the people on board for the probable cause that they are involved in terrorist activities, and then we have them interrogated or detained. Once we get enough information out of them to confirm that they were involved in cartel activities or understood that those were happening on board, we continue to seize the vessels and impound the vessels and their cargoes until they eventually fire on a U.S. Coast Guard vessel. Then we have all the authorization necessary to start obliterating these boats like we are right now. But at that point, we built up a proper case to be able to make it incredibly clear that we were trying to interdict cartel activities. We went through every single hoop and hurdle that we could have to make it look as legal and above board as possible. And then once we made it incredibly clear that they pose a danger to the life of the service members in the Coast Guard and the Navy, then we start to obliterate them. That's how I would have done it. It would have made it clear, cut, and simple. There wouldn't have really been a lot of ways that people could have brought up a questionability about whether or not these actions are legal. We would have done everything by the book at that point. But moving on out of the Americas, it's time for us to get on over to East Asia, as we did get to hear that the Chinese Coast Guard very recently has apparently entered Kinmen County's restricted waters on the 28th, the fourth incursion of the month. The Chinese Coast Guard vessels remained in the area for 2 hours and were shadowed throughout. There were 4 vessels involved with their numbers listed here. The Kinmen Island is practically within Xiamen Harbor within China. Here's Kinmen County. Here's the city of Xiamen. That's Xiamen Harbor. The Coast Guard vessels were within the waters of Kinmen County for about 2 hours. They were shadowed, and then they apparently retreated back into Xiamen Harbor. Still, it's a fairly interesting sort of a scenario. Once again, the 4th of the month, and once again showing that the Chinese are using low-level coercion against Taiwan once more. Meanwhile, inside of the Middle East, we did see that the Islamic Republic of Iran is now conducting airstrikes within northern Iraq against the semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan, as videos did emerge showing airstrikes clearly happening within the region.
Oh, wow. Look, Iran's got some munitions left. Hey, look out, buddy. Look out.
Man, look out! And also, additionally, we also saw that the Islamic Republic of Iran, simultaneously within the same area of the border, while they were conducting airstrikes, appeared to have been conducting some sort of military drills on the other side of the border. Not really sure, but we did get to see that right across the border from Iraq.
Where'd they get all that from?
I don't really know. I think that's conventional artillery impacts, though, or MLRS fire. Can't really tell you which one. I guess they just had that stockpiled around even after the 12-day war because the ground forces saw no action. But pretty wild to see that nonetheless.
I thought the Iranians had gotten totally rinsed, but apparently they've gotten some ammunition back from somebody. I wonder who.
The Air Force got rinsed, but the Army was very seldom hit, and when they were hit, it was usually only their air defense forces. So I think that most of the ground army in Iran is still intact, and that's probably why they have munitions and also guns to work with to be able to fire it. Also, we saw air patrols by the Iranians happening within the area around Kurdistan and Iran in this clip.
تشوف هالضوء الصغير هاي الطيارة جاية من صوب إيران اسمع صوتها ولو بعيدة فوق جبال كردستان.
So it does appear that the Iranians are involved in a military drill and airstrikes in Iraq simultaneously, which is quite odd. So, moving us on back into the big old news that came out of the Eastern Europe today, or generally Europe as a whole, we did get to hear that the United States liquid natural gas exports to Europe have risen by 40% following sanctions on Russian natural gas. So it does appear that the United States and Europe are now strengthening their supply chains on liquefied natural gas. Meanwhile, in Europe, there has been an alleged leak of a European intelligence agency that has apparently, allegedly, secretly shared intelligence with other European states on details of commercial and economic plans that the current administration allegedly was secretly pursuing with, allegedly, the Russians. So it's quite clear that, allegedly, something might have been going down, and it appears that the Europeans were apparently tapping the wires. At least someone in Europe was, and might have been getting a little bit of a jump on this story, if this is a correct story. So with that, we're going to be moving on out of the United Kingdom and on into Poland. Poland has approved another $100 million in arms to the state of Ukraine, blaming Russia for the current terrorism. The Polish foreign minister stated that it was $1 million for every centimeter of rail that was damaged inside of Poland due to the explosion on the Warsaw-Lublin main line. So quite interesting to see that. Outside of that, inside of Kazakhstan at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, there has been a very unfortunate incident for the Russians. The 31st launch complex, the only one at Baikonur right now that is approved to launch rockets, has actually suffered a structural collapse. It's no longer capable of launching rockets. So Russia now has...
Damn.
Huh?
Damn, they can't even launch a rocket anymore. They can't launch their space rockets to send people into orbit. They can't launch their ICBMs to protect themselves. I mean, I think that Russia's gone limp.
Man, they can't even get it up. Man,
I'll tell you what, these Erector launchers out here, they are malfunctioning. They've got that dysfunction.
Man, next thing you know, man, Putin's gonna be sitting there. Get on your knee. Man, but honestly, man, it appears that they won't be able to launch rockets anymore. Very unfortunate for them. Many have wept over this. Meanwhile, outside of that news, we also saw that the Ukrainians laid to waste Kazan and Yabeluga along the area of the Kama River. And that's the Chameleon River, just to make it clear. We got to see that a drone factory was hit within Yabeluga. That don't look like no beluga to me. That looks like a factory that's on fire. I think they need to rename the town to Yeah, my factory and shit is on fire, bleed. We also saw this additional picture here, which also added in the fact that it is a drone factory. The Russians called it a battery factory, but the Ukrainians generally understand it to be a drone factory. So, either way, something's on fire. Anyways, moving on from that and into Kazan, we also saw a little dead-on hit on the electrical substations of Kazan. You can tell because of the bright blue explosion that happened. And also that sound of electricity.
It was that night that Bliot Man was created from the depths of hell.
Man.
That's like Stark Industries there. They just created that man, and he's now, got those Bliot Man powers and stuff like that. He just got generated.
Man, bro, he just got generated. Man, like, honestly.
He got spawned in. He's in the level 1.
Man, he's a level 1 super suplex. Meanwhile, we also were able to hear outside of everything that happened in Russia, just making sure we hit all the nails in Moscow. We're now going to be moving on into Ukraine. As Andriy Yermak did resign and was dismissed this morning, I had to throw that in as part of the Ukrainian news segment. We already brought that up earlier, but just once again to bring it up, Andriy Yermak was dismissed and resigned over the alleged corruption scandal that's ongoing at the moment. Meanwhile, also in Belgrade, 2 electrical substations were blown up as well. Y'all want to see that? Of course you do. There's the fires from the substations. We understand that a decent amount of the city is once again in a blackout once more, and we also get to see a fire in one of these substations in this clip.
Hey, I'm Russian, hear me roar.
Man, I am Russian, hear me burn. But anyways, moving on out of that and into our location unknowns, we also get to see the 72nd conducting some training inside of Ukraine. This is the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, and they're wearing those classic gas masks of the Rossiyskiy Federatsiy, actually the Sovietsky Soyuz. But as we can see here, nice training, nonetheless. Moving on from that, we also get to see that the Russians have been treating their deserters quite poorly. These guys were under intense shelling and drone attacks by the Ukrainians and attempted to retreat from their posts. Their commissar apparently found them and then tied them up to a tree at night. This is the clip that followed.
Вот, посмотрите, 2 пидораса. Сюда смотрим, нахуй. На меня! 2 пидораса. Когда их друзья, нахуй, заливаются на позицию, эти 2 хуеплета решили, нахуй, найти выход проще, сбежать, да? Ты смотришь, овца, ты еще апни мне нахуй.
Didn't he just tell them to stare at him, and then when they stared at him, he was like, "Why are you staring at me?" This guy's a little confused.
You know what they call this, by the way? This position right here, you know what they call it?
What do they call it?
They call it post-battle.
I don't get it.
You know, like after battle, you know, like these guys are out of battle now. They're tied up to a post, you know, but post battle, you know.
Oh, it's about the poster title. It should have been clearer. I didn't understand the pun. That was a good dad joke. Are you a father now, Matthew? That is like something a real father would have come up with.
Сюда смотри, сука. Сюда
See,
смотри.
he's like, don't look at me, and then he's like, look at me. This guy's very confused.
Ты чё, сука, хуеплёты ебаные, я ж достану и обоссу, сука, тут ясно нахуй. Хули ты смотришь? Опустил ебало. Опустил, вам самим не стрёмно вы, гондоны ебаные, а? Чё,
Robbers.
сука? Не
What?
стрёмно, я спрашиваю, пидоры? Когда ваши пацаны, сука, там нахуй погибают, и вы гачитесь тут, крысы ебаные бегаете.
Bro, honestly, these guys are the smartest guys on the front line at this point if they're hiding like rats, because like if they don't hide like rats, then the real rats are going to put them out to pasture.
I also heard that this commissar here was just arrested by Russian authorities for making an insult on Dmitry Peskov's name, aka the rat. Man, he said, you're hiding like rats. They said, do not insult our spokesperson like that. You're going to prison.
Я завтра решу, что с вами делать, а вы пока тут сидите и нахуй молитесь. Решайте между собой, кого первого завтра обнулять буду нахуй. Пидорасы
That is so
ебаные.
stupid. It's like, how dumb can you get? It's like, what? This is setting such a bad precedent for the other soldiers. It's like, okay, they have two options here. They can hope and pray that they last for 2 weeks on the front lines, like actually against the Ukrainians that will eventually take them out, or they can get it early from their own commander. It's like, I mean, that's a lose-lose situation.
Or, Matthew, there is a third option, which is to hop in the tank and run the commander over, which has happened dozens of times in the war because of stuff like this. Like that, crazily enough, folks, that sort of it's generally called fratricide, has actually happened dozens of times in the war, more times than we can actually count. Commanders have been fragged, shot, run over with tanks, run over with cars, hit by a drone, by their own guys. There's been a million different stories that we've heard. Hell, remember that one, Matthew, where that one guy whipped out an AK, shot all of his top commanders, hopped on a dirt bike, and then went AWOL through Donetsk for like a day or something like that, and they were trying to find him?
Yeah, I think I do remember that.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some crazy stories. So commanders like that, they generally, much like their soldiers, they generally don't last that long either, because they end up instilling a lot of hatred inside of the ranks against them. But moving on from that,
And you remember the guys also. Honestly, the post, the tying the guys up with their hands to the post, that's light work compared to what they were doing before. I saw them literally burying guys up to their neck. You know, like just their neck was like sticking out of the dirt. They had like dug deep holes. They had put the dirt back on top of them, which obviously that weight of that dirt is going to really hamper their breathing. And they just leave them in these pits, like with the dirt on top of them and their head sticking out of the dirt, you know, indefinitely. And you know what happens from there? It ends up going really, really bad for most of those people. So, I mean, they want to know why the people are deserting, why the people are surrendering. It's like, well, because, I mean, their alternative is their commanders are going to abuse the hell out of them. That's the alternative.
Let's see. Also, by the way, someone said, fratricide means you kill your family. No. Well, it means that, but it also means the accidental killing of one's own forces in war. Just wanted to make that clear. There's multiple definitions for fratricide. Fratricide is also largely fragging, basically. Friendly fire is basically fratricide, but friendly fire is the excusable form of fratricide because of mistaken identity and so on. But fratricide in its normal case is what fragging is, which is taking out your top officers because they got you angry. But anyways, moving on from that, we also have the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours, and no Bobcats, unfortunately, but the numbers were pretty decent. According to Miss D, keeper of the records, only third time AFVs were in double-digit losses in November, which is actually quite rare these days. 11-15 was a prior high of 19, also day for prior recent high of 6 tanks. So there are more out there to be destroyed. Troop losses on track to match October totals, so generally consistent months these days. Meanwhile, over the course of the past 24 hours, 1,100 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 15 APCs, 48 supply trucks, 7 main battle tanks, 21 artillery pieces, 63 drones, and that was generally the losses for the day. Still pretty decent, and good to see that the Russian Federation is still getting bled pretty dry out there on the field by the Ukrainian defenses. Moving on to the Vovchansk, we were able to see some Russian Buhankas of the 57th Motorized Brigade being taken out by Ukrainian fiber optic drones. We see this Buhanka getting hit. The electronic warfare system didn't really help. We can also see this car getting hit. And this one as well.
How
No,
muddy. Well, look how muddy it is out here. Oh, what in the world was that? A thermite going off or something?
wow, they had a thermite grenade on this thing. They activated it and then flew the burning thermite grenade into the car. That's actually crazy.
Damn. That is crazy. But also, look at the mud. Like, the mud is crazy. Like, it's just wet, nasty. It's disgusting out there.
Man, it's full-on Rasputitsa season out here in Ukraine right now. Soon, in late December, this will all start to freeze. So the ruts that they make in the roads, they'll generally freeze in that sort of condition after December, and on up until about March or so, and then March is when the Rasputitsa will come around again. So, once again, we're back in those incredibly muddy conditions that we've seen on the front about half a dozen times at this point through the war. But moving on out of Vovchansk and on down into the area of the Severonsky Forest, we also saw an assault being conducted by the Ukrainian armed forces of the Arton unit inside of the area, which was a pretty crazy clip. So here it is. All right, and so apparently we have the Dune music going. Here's the Lisan al-Gaib! Yummy, yummy! Anyways, they're flying on into battle on their Max Pros and armored cars with the 50 cals clearly up front. These guys are cruising in style. And there they go. And now they're laying down fire with the 50 cal, suppressing the Russians in the tree line. And I got to tell you, that 50 cal does some work.
It really is. It's putting in work like a bodybuilder out here. Look at that. Those inside those Max Pros are so nice too. They have air conditioner. They've got everything. Meanwhile, this guy right here is he's like a lumberjack. Call him Paul Bunyan. He's chopping these twigs down like nothing.
Man, even from the grave, John Moses Browning still defines modern warfare with the M250 cal.
Thank you, Moses.
Man, Browning was a visionary. And he said, this thing is going to mow down so many Russians, and he was right. Honestly, Moses Browning didn't even know what the M2 was ever going to be used for. He probably would have never known that the M250 cal has been in pretty much every single war since it was made. We now see them driving on out after the raid was successful. And that's the end of the clip from the Arton unit. Meanwhile, we also saw some footage from the 8th SOF's Regiment, 4th Group, as they were continuing to conduct actions within the area of the Severonsky Forest. You see them popping out of their souped-up ATV and immediately whipping out the carbine. Hitting them with a little AT. Now they're getting on the reeds, as they say. You see them getting on out there in the woods. I'll be honest with y'all, the Severonsky Forest clips kind of all blend in because the forest looks the same. It's either toothpicks or just generally kind of like a well-manicured forest. Well, you see this one Russian soldier surrendering under artillery fire.
Giving them the duct tape treatment. You gotta give them a little bit of that tape.
Man, you gotta give him a little bit of it. Ooh.
Oh my God, that was close.
There was an explosion nearby. They also have their Humvee rolling out pretty quickly after that. We don't know what happened in the woods there. Someone was screaming behind him. I don't know if it was another Ukrainian and they evacuated him, or if he was wounded, or if he just had it happen near to him and he was screaming to get in the Humvee. We don't know. But still, it does appear that the actions within the area of the Severonsky Forest today generally were successful and the line has held. Meanwhile, in Luhansk, we also saw more significant strikes occurring within the area, including that one and that tiny clip right there. We don't know exactly what was hit, but we're going to try and get more information on that in the coming days. Meanwhile, down in Donetsk, we also saw that the Russian thought police have arrived. Graciously published by TASS, we were able to see the Russian FSB go into the house of a Ukrainian living in Donetsk in the occupied territory and arresting them for, and I quote, anti-Russian statements on the internet. Man, and some people thought they had it rough in Britain. Like, they have it worse in Russia. This is the FSB, just wandering up in this guy's crib while he sleeps. See, they're yanking him out of bed. They're like, get up, you've said bad stuff.
Yep, FSB.
Bro, you know, honestly, man, the way these guys are dressed, I'm expecting them to say, are you a U.S. citizen? Do you have papers? Like, it's like, oh no. But you see them arresting the guy.
Начальнику ФСБ России по ДНР возбуждение перед судом ходатайства о проведении оперативно-розыскных мероприятий.
Знаешь, зачем ты? Ну ничего сказать не хочешь?
Ну я не знаю, Следует из материалов по месту проживания хранятся предметы и документы, указывающие на совершенное им противоправное деяние.
An illegal act, they say. Everyone is watching, they say. And we can also see
I feel like I'm watching like what's that guy's name? The fella what's that fella's name that was catching the bad kid people? You know what I'm talking about? Hansen, what's his name?
Hi, I'm Chris Hansen. Can you have a seat?
Yeah, Chris. I feel like I'm watching a Chris Hansen thing or something like that. But they're nabbing him for apparently saying something bad against Putin.
Oh my god, they found the protractors. It's over. Like, this guy's going to jail. Let's see.
Is that U.S. dollars on the table?
No, that actually looks like a... I don't know what that... well, that actually looks like a 20 right there that's kind of like crumpled up. I don't know what the other currency is.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that is. Looks like currency, art money.
Also, I gotta say, this guy's collection of stuff in this little pack is quite something. He has a card with a QR code on the back of it, a box of matches, a crumpled up $20 bill, 10 of some other currency, an identification card, a condom with a power sign on it. Have no clue why. Yeah, bro, he's got a rubber. And then he's got some tiny playing cards, and then apparently a block of soap. So this guy is prepared for everything. Like, he's prepared for getting screwed at a game of cards for everything he's got, basically. That's what he's set up for right here.
Plot twist, the FSB might have brought the rubber.
Dude, they said, you're about to get screwed by the Russian courts, but before they do, you're going to get screwed by me. Oh, no, man.
Oh, man.
Dude, they are combing through his attic for this anti-Russian activity. I'm 20 years old, and I'm on Telegram channels. I wrote pro-Ukrainian and wrote explicit comments. Like, I think the Russians kind of suck, yo. That was the explicit comment. Calling for violence against Russians. Did you expect FSB officers to come to you? No, honestly, I didn't expect. Well, who would? Like who would? I was shocked. Moreover, such comments are punishable by law. That is, I can already say, this from my own experience, that you shouldn't do that.
Damn, meanwhile, behind the camera, the FSB was waving around the rubber behind the camera. You better say what we want, you understand?
Bro, they sat there and said, now listen, you can either do this the easy way or you can get it the hard way. Like, which one do you want, man? It's like, man, that's why he was easy to confess in front of the camera. Now they put him in the back of the paddy wagon and they take him off. So, you know.
What a joke, too, in Russia. Like, the fact they try to, like, put forth the idea they have a fair, like, legal system. It's like they force a confession, like, at the moment of arrest. They don't tell him he has any rights or anything, apparently. They just force a confession. I'm like, the guy's already, you know, pretty much dead to rights at that point. Like, they take him to court, he's already confessed, so it's a done deal at that point. There is no justice.
Man, there's no way to escape the long rubber of the law in Russia, man. Like, honestly, man, there's no way to escape it. The power button rubbers will always be around every corner. Say something wrong in Russia, and you'll pay for it dearly. Outside of that, near Pokrovsk, just a couple of dozen miles to the west, the 503rd Marine Battalion was able to knock out a Russian main battle tank in the fields around Frutivka. Man, that thing be cooking.
It's cooking better than an A5 Wagyu steak on a griddle in the backyard.
Damn! Man, that thing is actually broiling down there. That was quite a significant fire started by the ammo cook-off. But moving on from that clip and on into the northern part of the Pokrovsk front, we also got to see the anti-tank gunners of the 35th Marines Brigade hard at work. And when I mean hard at work, they were doing work. Check it out. Well, you see them blasting a Russian fire team, a Russian vehicle. Basically, high explosive snipers is what the anti-tank units have turned into. You see them giving a little post-game interview. This guy's like, I like
You
my...
see, I was out there on the front lines. It was crazy stuff. I said, whoa, this is crazy. I said, whoa, look at this. Look at that falcon on the back. We have a half skull down there. He's wearing a beret. He's wearing it the right way, of course.
Squaw! Man. He's like,
Damn.
you see, I like my boonie, and I run around on the battlefield in this boonie. And then they go running on through. He's like, you see, you don't want to mess with my ATGMs because the boys will make you want to ATGM, General Motors. You get it? Boy, we can see them killing... What the hell? Right there to Lukashenko.
I was gonna go on a joke rampage. So, yeah, I've done enough already. Let me hold back a little bit.
Oh, St. Javelin? St. Javelin has made an epic return. Did you see that, Matty? They had a Javelin CLU there.
They sure did. This guy's beard is like throwing me off a little bit. Like, it's interesting.
I'm not going to lie, it kind of is. But we can see them now running through the forests, getting ready to blast a Russian or two. Oh, and we see him laying low for a second. Ooh, a nice rifle. And a nice suppressor. Dang, he's got a nice little set. They like the
dang, this guy's bebopping around right here. Look at him. He's got the eyes on the top of that thing right there.
Bebop, bop, 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 bop. Man, like, bro, he bebopping for real. Man, everyone in this unit likes the boonie hats. Like, they really love them.
This one's basically covering this guy's eyes. Like, he can barely even see. Look at him. He's acting a little nonchalant. He's acting like he's got some swagger going on or something.
Probably a little chill like that. You know, blow up a Russian tank. Real chill guy like that.
I feel like maybe back at home he might have been a menace, but now he's putting it to work.
Man, he said, honestly, man, I'm blowing the ops away like I did back in Poltava, believe. Man, it's like, yo, it's like, hey, wait a minute.
You see, I jumped in the bins and I spin the block I came around and I saw a Ruski up there. He said, it's an op on the corner. He can't be here. You got to go back your way. You're not from the set.
Come here, Ruski. Come here, Ruski. Get on the tank and pray to the Lord. Man, like, yeah! Man. But we can see all the post-game interviews going on after they hit a couple of rushes. I'll show you all the actual hits here. Bam! Right on the mark. And another one, just in case you missed the first one. We'll get to the next clip here of them conducting action on the front. Oh, here goes a little pop. And there it went. Made the cameraman jump a little.
That's what's known in Ukraine as running a festoon on the ups.
We call that the drive-by scooting. Man, it's like, man. And there goes the
Look at that. They done a nasty on the ops. They said, take him to a Ruski, blad.
Man, they said, take him to the other side. Man, like, man, I'm telling you, they put in some work. But generally, that's the end of the clip. The rest of it's the post-game interviews, which is great to see the 35th Marines being quite precise up there on the northern flank. Meanwhile, the Russians are getting so angry, they're now flinging Fab 3000s at the Ukrainians basically every day in Brukhovsk. Here's one of them that exploded today.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they're quite large. These are about 5,000 pounds each. So the Russians are getting quite frustrated. They don't have a huge number of these, actually. So the fact that they're using them is showing that the Ukrainians are giving some really tough resistance, tougher resistance than the Russians ever really anticipated. Outside of that, air defense was also seen around the area of Pavlograd today. This person was walking their dog in the midst of the air defense. Kind of baller.
They got that like retired police dog. That dog's like he's ready to like jump into this action.
Man, he's like, let me at him. Man, put me in, coach. But still, very unfortunate thing to see the Ukrainian citizens do have to live under fire every day. Once again, with Russian drone incursions happening right overhead. But still, the Ukrainians do hold on and continue to fight back. Moving on from that, it's now time for us to get on up to Kyiv to cover the speech of the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this very day of the war. So, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Шановні українці, українки, тільки зараз за кілька днів я провів вже майже 20 розмов з нашими партнерами. Всі вони як один кажуть, ми в захваті від того, як в умовах наявного тиску тримається Україна. Як Україна бореться в пошуках миру для своїх людей, а насправді для всіх в Європі, щонайменше в Європі. Сьогодні я вже говорив з президентом Фінляндії, Алекс поінформував, що звучало від Росії формально і неформально, та про умови, які Росія висуває. Зараз же ми готуємось до зустрічі з американською стороною про кроки, які потрібні, щоб мир дійсно був. І щоб це був достойний мир. І коли вся увага зосереджена на дипломатії, на захисті у війні, потрібна внутрішня сила. Внутрішня сила – це основа нашої зовнішньої єдності і наших відносин зі світом. І щоб внутрішня сила була, не має бути причин відволікатись на щось інше, крім захисту України. Я хочу, щоб ні у кого не було жодних питань до України. Тому сьогодні наступні внутрішні рішення. Перше. Відбудеться перезавантаження Офісу президента України. Керівник Офісу Андрій Єрмак написав заяву про відставку. Я вдячний Андрію за те, що українська позиція в переговорному треку завжди була ним представлена саме так, як і має бути. Завжди це була патріотична позиція. Але я хочу, щоб не було чуток і спекуляцій. Що стосується нового керівника Офісу, завтра я проведу консультації з тими, хто може очолити цю інституцію. Скоро будуть перемовини, будуть наші представники. Це буде начальник Генштабу, представники МЗС, секретар РНБО та наша розвідка. І коли у нас у всіх є такий зовнішній виклик – війна, ми маємо всередині бути міцними. Саме на захисті України будуть зосереджені 100% нашої сили. Кожен має зараз діяти саме так, в інтересах нашої держави і захищати нашу державу. Це незмінний принцип. Вже найближчим часом відбудуться зустрічі з американською стороною. Друге. Кабінет міністрів України. Я розраховую, що прем'єр-міністр України Юлія Свириденко разом з народними депутатами в діалозі і єдності забезпечить Україні 3 речі. Найголовніше – ухвалити бюджет 26-го року. Тобто спроможність нашої держави захищатися, забезпечувати оборону, забезпечувати всі соціальні виплати та необхідну стійкість. Це те, що потрібно людям. Я очікую також кандидатур на міністрів енергетики та юстиції. Чинних міністрів треба оцінити так, щоб зробити абсолютно чіткі висновки. Чи відповідають чинні посадовці викликам і цієї зими, і цієї війни. Третє, я говорив зі Службою безпеки України, щоб вони провели свій аналіз ситуації в правоохоронній системі та в регіонах. Незабаром будуть доповіді, будуть мої висновки і будуть рішення. Забагато негативу з регіонів. Ми домовились, що Служба безпеки надасть інформацію мені швидко. І, звісно, армія. Наші воїни – герої. Наші воїни знищують ворога, і саме це основа нашої здатності будувати дипломатію. Є проблеми, які давно варто вирішити. Главком, Генштаб, Павло Паліса вже цим займаються і наступного тижня готують відповідну ставку. Перш за все, щоб був дійсно справедливий, раціональний розподіл особового складу між бригадами. Принципи, як це зробити, вже є, і в кожній бойовій бригаді про це кажуть. Рішення буде. Дякую всім, хто з Україною. Дякую кожному, хто і зараз, і завжди захищає Україну. Я дякую всім, хто забезпечує, щоб тиск був на Росію, на причину цієї війни, а не на нашу державу і людей, не на українців. Українці мають виграти. Це найважливіше. Росія дуже хоче, щоб Україна робила помилки. З нашого боку помилок не буде. Наша робота триває. Наша боротьба триває. Не маємо права не дотиснути, не маємо права відступити чи розсваритись. Втратимо єдність, ризикуємо втратити все. Себе, Україну, своє майбутнє. Маємо зібратись, мусимо триматись. Іншого вибору у нас немає. Іншої України у нас не буде. Захищаємо Україну. Слава Україні!
Ram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of 1374 of the news from around the world. And it's time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, is it going to be an absolutely good segment. We can talk about literally anything and everything anything that we would want to, except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant or not in modern warfare. But everything else is on the table. And I got to say, folks, that it is one hell of a night. Once again, I got to thank you all, once again, for being here and listening to the news here on this channel on Black Friday of all days. Not a lot of people were here tonight compared to the normal amount of people who were here. A lot of people were out there still getting those Black Friday deals. And for them, I respect them. And we look forward to seeing them tomorrow on air, hopefully with a couple of extra items at great discount. But nevertheless, folks, it is time for us to move on into the second segment and to get to talk about all kinds of interesting things, interesting and incredible things. And also, really quickly, I do want to clarify this because I think my comment came off wrong in the live chat, but there was a viewer that was saying you can have two opinions at the same time, and did y'all have a bad day, and generally trying to turn it into something confrontational. And what I was meaning in my comment there, just to clarify this, because it seems like Matthew thought it was confrontational, so just in case other people took it that way, I want to clarify it. You can have two separate opinions on basically the same topic, but you are going to sound stupid when you say a different opinion on the very same thing. Like if you say, for example, that killing is bad, but you take glee in killing in one situation that's practically identical to another, and then in the other situation, you make it sound like it's absolutely stupid and killing is senseless, then you're going to sound quite stupid making that argument. That's like saying it would be great to be a multi-billionaire, and then you sit there and say, I mean, like, you know, Jeff Bezos, he's living the life. And then you sit there and say to someone else who's poor, honestly, you don't need to have a lot of money. That's completely pointless and stupid. Like, you know, you're saying that it's great to have a lot of money, but then you're completely applying a different rule to someone else for no reason. Although, you know, in both situations, if you think money's great, you ought to tell everyone, oh, it'd be great for you to have a ton of money. You know, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, really. So, you know, generally it makes a lot of sense that your opinion remains consistent across the board. And that's also, I mean, you know, maybe that's been normalized because that's a very prevalent thing in modern American politics, is to have completely different opinions on completely different topics. That's probably one of the biggest ones that exists currently, is life valuable or not? And if you ask both political party in different situations, they'll give you completely different answers depending on the scenario. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from that hypothetical scenario and to get on into talking to each and every one of y'all. It is time for questions, and it's time for Beanie. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping right back into our Super Chat questions proper, let's get right back into them here. He's also, by the way, I heard Jeff Bezos mentioned. I said, you gotta love Jeff Bezos. He throws that money around like you'd never see before. They said, Jeff Bezos. But anyways, jumping into our Super Chat questions in all seriousness, our first one here of the last segment goes to Con45. And Con puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Con, for that generous $50 support. He said, if a British official was advising the Germans on how to manipulate Churchill during World War II, they would have been charged with treason. And a particular U.S. official, in Khan's opinion, must be removed from the negotiations after this alleged undeniable betrayal of our allied interest regarding Ukraine.
I would generally have to agree with you. I would say that's something I would generally agree with. You know, actually, that did happen in the Second World War, not from the British, but from the Germans. Some of y'all may have heard about the infamous flight of Rudolf Hess to the United Kingdom. Have you ever heard of Rudolf Hess, Matthew?
The name rings familiar, but I don't know the exact details.
Well, on one fateful night, Rudolf Hess the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but I'm just kidding. Let me go get Rudolf Hess. This is Rudolf Hess, who was once one of the most important people within Nazi Germany. He was the deputy Führer of the Nazi Party. So at the time, at the beginning of World War II, the right-hand man of Hitler was Rudolf Hess. And what he did is that on the 11th of May, if I'm not mistaken, in 1941, he took a little German recon plane, flew it to the United Kingdom, landed it on the coastline, and showed up and said, I'm here to negotiate a peace between our two sides. You know what the Germans did? They declared the guy a traitor, stated that he had conducted treason, and sentenced him in absentia, I believe, to death. The British put him in prison anyways. The guy was nuts at that point. That was an absolutely stupid plan on his end. But that's what generally happened. With the British, if the British had done something similar like that in the Second World War, that wouldn't have ended up too well. So I would generally say that someone who gets involved in being an unbiased person in their practice, and then they clearly show bias to one party or another, it's probably best to remove them from the negotiating process. And generally, honestly, it's kind of like the best thing, to be entirely honest, if that happens, that they're more biased to the person we're backing in the fight than the other people. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that the best I can. A huge thanks to you once again, Con, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep it running. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, rumor has it that once Rudolph showed up to Britain and he got locked up, he later accepted a job at the North Pole as a sleigh operator, the lead sleigh operator, actually, the one where you blink the red light and stuff like that, and you make sure that you're safe to, fly your sleigh and stuff like that. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here, this one's going to go to Hokey Redneck yet again, and he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that second support of the night. He said, do you think we will use the 101st or 82nd if we do things down south?
Oh, I would probably assume that we would. Usually you put your most elite troops up first, which is kind of to the misconception of many. For some reason, a lot of people think that you put the bottom of the barrel grunts up first in a war. Usually you put your best up in a war first. So if we do anything against Venezuela, it's probably fairly likely that special forces and more elite regular forces of the army will be involved, like the 82nd and the 101st. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, that would give the SIG Spear its first use in combat, which I don't know how that thing's going to really perform, but it is pretty neat. Like this thing, the chunky AR, it is kind of neat. So I wonder how it's going to work. It's got a 6.8 millimeter cartridge. So right after we got everyone on the 5.56 grays, we then moved on to the next caliber. Isn't that great? But yeah, outside of that, I wonder how this thing is going to perform. And it comes with the next, it's the whole NGWS weapons package. Every single XM7 or M7 that is issued, if y'all don't know, is all issued with suppressors, and they're also all issued with advanced optics. So quite interesting, honestly. And also I saw Boba Vasquez say that looks like a crap looking gun. I mean, honestly, it just doesn't really have the look like an M4 carbine or an M16. I'll say that I think that that's still design peak. That's probably the best looking thing out there. And it just kind of looks weird, It looks like it has all of the furniture of an AR style platform, same dimensions and everything, but the actual upper, more so, is ginormous. I mean, like, it's absolutely massive. Compared to what it would normally be on an M4. It does look kind of odd. But it still is cool, the NGWS equipment with the suppressor and the optics. I mean, that is actually quite cool to think that that's a standard issue now. And it really shows how far the Army's come, because back in the day, like not too long ago, up in the 80s and such, hell, even on and kind of into the 90s, really, a lot of units in the Army didn't even have optics at all. They just had iron sights, and that was it. And then it was around, I believe, the late 90s and the 2000s, the ACOGs started to show up in mass, and those were mass issued. And now we're seeing suppressors and even more advanced optics than the ACOG, with variable zoom being introduced in the NGWS platform. I would have to say that is a huge upgrade when you really look at that. And also the fact that it appears to be equipped at least... Oh, that's just for display purposes. I'll be saying, with a bipod? I was like, that is even more crazy. But really cool. It's an interesting weapon system. I just think that it probably would have been better if it was chambered in 5.56 and was more like the HK416 platform than this, and changing the caliber completely, because that creates some logistical issues. But still, it is pretty cool. I'll give it that. Not the best looking thing, but neat in practice nonetheless. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, let's see here. Let's see here. There's currently something going on in Poland right now. Pull up Flight Radar 24 real quick. I'm trying to do a NOTAM search real quick, which is sort of semi-complicated, to see what's going on. I think a NOTAM's been issued for Lublin. Take that with a grain of salt, but I think a NOTAM's been issued. I'm trying to check.
Oh, it's generally empty down there right now, and there is an attack going on in Ukraine at the moment, so it's highly likely.
Yeah, so I'm seeing here that it appears there is an active NOTAM over Lublin International Airport right now for unplanned military activity related to ensuring state security. So this is breaking news, apparently. Amidst the ongoing massive drone attack that Russia is conducting on major cities in Ukraine, right now there's hundreds of drones over Ukraine, by the way, a massive attack going on. It looks like Poland has issued a NOTAM for their major international airport in Lublin, which is indicative that likely F-16s are in the air as well. So seems like something big is happening yet again. We did see this a few days back, that Poland did this out of an abundance of caution, not necessarily because drones crossed over, just out of an abundance of caution. But it looks like they're doing it once again tonight. There's very little information about it right now. I'm trying to do searches on the databases to find this out, but it looks like Lublin is the first one.
I'm not seeing any AWACS aircraft up with transponders on or aerial tankers within the area. So that is somewhat interesting, but they may be coming into the area. I'm not really sure. Not seeing them heavily tracked, though, and I'm also not seeing any aircraft identifiers in the air at the moment that would look like that at all, as a matter of fact. So I'm thinking if they're up in the air, they have practically no support at this point, especially no AWACS support, but they still may be up in the air nonetheless and operating off of ground-based radars and such things like that. Maybe.
Possibly so. Let's see here. They make it so difficult to do a NOTAM search. Let's see, EPLB. That's the NOTAM notice here. Let's see, EPLB. So yeah, I'll try to do some more research on this. I don't want to hold everybody up on it right now, but it looks like there is indeed a NOTAM there for that airport. Okay, dang, they need to redo the flight database system for this thing. It's a doozy. But anyways, with that, folks, we're moving on to our next super chat, I believe. Were we done answering that one from Hokey Redneck?
Kind of. But I actually saw an additional add-on. I saw Indy. Actually, it wasn't Indy, Andy. It was Foster 8069 say they wanted 6.5. It's actually 6.8, I believe, for the Spear, because they want something to take out armored enemies at distance in the Afghan mountains. Wonder if that rationale makes it unnecessary. Honestly, the whole lethality of fire doesn't really make a lot of sense, because the volume of fire concept that has been around since the adoption of the 5.56 makes a great deal more sense, because in every single war, small arms fire accounts for a wildly small amount of battlefield casualties in both wounded and killed. It is generally artillery or indirect fire forms that generally result in the highest amount of casualties, usually about 70 to 80% in most wars. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to prioritize lethality of fire in a small arms package, because it isn't necessarily about how lethal the rounds are. It really matters more so how long can a squad lay down fire at an enemy and fix them in place and keep their heads down, so artillery or an airstrike can be called on them to take them out that way and generally decimate their numbers in that form. That's generally what we've been going off of as a running doctrine for infantry tactics, really ever since the 60s, when the AR-15 platform was first introduced as the M16 and the M16A1. And so far, we've never really seen anything to contradict that doctrine does not work, because even before we went off of that doctrine, the reason why we brought that into being is because we found out artillery and indirect fire, like airstrikes and bombings, they do far more damage to an enemy force always than ground fire, well, small arms fire. So why in the world make the rounds lethal, where one shot will take out a foe, when you could more so make it to where you can just lay down a whole bunch of rounds, have them whizzing over people's heads, and everyone's psychological response to being under fire, no matter the caliber, is to get as low to the ground as possible and pretty much stay in place. So once you're firing them, they're fixed in place no matter the caliber, so it's better just to have more rounds than less, and then you can call artillery in on them, and then the rest is history, or an airstrike, one or the other. So I would generally say I don't really understand the doctrine behind the SIG Spear, because it's almost going back to the 7.62x51 with the lethality of small arms fire concept that we had back then, where a battle rifle was supposed to be a one-shot, one-killer, and it just doesn't really make any sense in a modern battlefield, because volume of fire has proven to be a good bit more efficient, at least in my opinion, based off of the historical examples we see, and also with how our entire armed forces is structured these days. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving into our next super chat here, and also a big shout out to Hokey once again for that support. We also have a 20 from Keith Sires, and oh my God, excuse me there, Keith. I had a bit of a voice crack there, a little bit of a wobble, but thank you very much, Keith, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. And Keith said, since Putin is a military general, is he a legitimate military target?
Technically, he is. Technically, every leader of every state is a legitimate military target in times of war, but it's heavily advised not to strike them, although a lot of people would want to, because you generally want to have a standing generally intact government to be able to talk to and also not completely lose contact with in a war. So while you technically could try and conduct a strike against Putin, it probably wouldn't be the best advisable move because there's a high chance of failure there. And then if you conduct a failure like that, that will automatically become a significant escalation, may even start to move it into nuclear warfare territory. So that's generally why you see that strikes like that generally are not conducted, and it's exceedingly rare in practically every war. I can't really think of any war, to be entirely honest with y'all, in modern times where a leader was generally outright killed in a strike of a legitimate country. Now, people like Osama bin Laden, who are leaders of terrorist groups, will go and wipe them out without a second thought. But I can't think of, in modern times, any legitimate national leader that we would just kill outright in the outbreak of a war. Even Saddam Hussein, what we did then is that we captured and apprehended Saddam Hussein, and then we handed him over to the interim Iraqi government for trial, and then they did a show trial and they executed him. But even still, we didn't just wipe him out in a strike. We kept him alive the entire time we were invading Iraq in 2003 and in 1991, and then we gave him over to the interim government for trial. So I would generally say you could, like in theory you could, but it might not be the best move because of the possible ramifications if it fails. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Philip Lanebull. And thank you very much, Philip, as well, for that $20 support. He said, Seattle right now is about 50 degrees.
50 degrees. 50 degrees. That's actually warmer than it is down here in Salt Lake. And also a big shout out to all the folks up in Seattle. Really interesting place up there. Beautiful mountains and that Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. Really, really beautiful stuff up there. And I gotta say, y'all are actually having a warmer time up there than we are down here. Down here, it's in the 40s right now in the day, and then it gets down to like the 20s at night, which is really crazy, honestly. Also, by the way, folks, another cool thing, just to say this, I got this really cool poster. Matthew saw it today, and it's the 1937 surveyor's map of Utah, and it's 2D, but it's shaded to look like it's three-dimensional, and it's really cool. Let me see Utah 1937 map. Let me see if I can pull it up this way. Yeah, here it is. This is the map that I got. I was talking about this on stream. It did not cost me $139. It cost me like $65, but it is such a cool looking map. I was looking over this map a lot today, and I was like, wow, that is just so cool. It's such a neat looking map. I think this is the original map that was made, but this is the one where they actually made it like a relief map where it shows the altitudes of well, the topography, which is just so interesting. And it's really neat to look at how the mountain ranges exist here in Utah, and the fact that the salt flats are literally flat. I mean, there's practically no elevation changes within those salt flats in western Utah. Really cool, honestly.
It is cool.
Man, it's like super cool. It's super neat. And I gotta say, folks, I'm a huge fan of Utah already. Utah is a really cool state. So I just gotta say, folks, really cool place, really neat place, and a huge fan of it nonetheless. But still, Washington is also a really cool state. I think Washington is a really pretty state, really interesting one too. Haven't seen a lot of it though, rather than the area around Interstate 5, kind of going down the Portland and back up. Haven't seen much more than that in the Seattle area, but one day I'd like to travel around Washington State a little bit more and get a little bit more of a ganda at it, because there's this really cool place, folks, in Washington State that's called Leavenworth, and that's not Fort Leavenworth like the prison, the military prison. This is Leavenworth in Washington State, which is completely different than that. And Leavenworth is like a big, giant Christmas village. The whole thing is. So it's a really big, kind of like a seasonal town, and it's surrounded by mountains, of course, so it kind of looks like it's in the Alps. So you can almost mistake this for like a Swiss Alp city, out there.
Yeah, it's really cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's really neat. I mean, look at that, man. It looks like you're in Germany.
It's like Germany or something. It's like Bavaria.
Yeah, it's like Bavaria, Switzerland, something like that. It's a really crazy place. And you know what's even crazier, folks? You can actually get here by rail. If you live in Seattle, you can actually take the Amtrak's Empire Builder, and the Empire Builder will actually drop you off right here at the Leavenworth station, right outside the city, and it has a bus they'll take you and drop you off right in downtown Leavenworth. So pretty cool little place for all those things considered. But anyways,
You gotta be careful taking the Empire Builder though, because it doesn't always go well like every single time. Because for example, if you happen to live in Russia and you try to take the Empire Builder, it turns out that you'll demolish your entire economy, your country, and everything you ever built in the country. So you got to be careful empire building. Like it's something that can't be taken lightly, and you have to do it intentionally.
man, you have to do it like real careful, like, you know, because the Empire Builder, it's a dangerous trip, you know, like it's a dangerous trip in concept, but still, this is a really cool place, and I would say that one day I would like to go and see this place myself. Also, it's kind of a little crazy that they also call it the Washington Icicle Station to kind of match that Christmassy theme that's around here. Also, what the hell are these? Are these grape farms? I don't know what these are. Those aren't grape farms.
Those are olive trees.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not. I'm just like taking stabs at it, honestly.
What are these, folks? Because this is surrounding everywhere around Leavenworth. There's like groves of these crops, and I have no idea what they are at all. I've never seen anything like that. Also, what is this? The Lindheim Lodge. Oh, that's pretty cool.
It really does look like Bavaria. I mean, it's pretty close when it starts snowing.
Yeah, I see some people saying almonds. Maybe it's almonds. Very interesting crop though. A reindeer farm. Oh my God, they actually got real reindeer here.
Wow, that is crazy. Santa farmed them right here. Like, can you believe it? Like,
Bro,
they're right there.
they pluck them straight from the vine. Like, that's what those trees are for, man. They're the reindeer trees. They grow them and then they pluck them off the vine and they bring them here.
You gotta watch out though. I've heard there's a lot of bullying that goes on in like the reindeer community. Like, it's a real thing. Like, you know, that's how like sometimes they develop heroes out of that bullying. Like sometimes you get like Rudolph out of that. Not the guy who fled to Britain and was a cowardly bitch, but I'm talking about the deer, like with the red nose. I'm talking about that one.
Oh man, bro, man, that one was so funny. I'm gonna have to send you up the Chumstick Highway.
Damn, that's like Plankton's highway there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it, like, why the hell is this the Chumstick Highway? It's nowhere near the sea. Isn't like chum like something they throw up the back of boats to lure in the fish? Like, also, this is actually like kind of scenic out here, really. But let's see. I'm just so interested, folks, because everyone's throwing in different stuff. They're like apricots, almonds, apples. I don't really know a lot of the tree crops, folks, because we didn't have any tree crops in Alabama. Everything was like soy or cotton or corn or something along those lines. I never saw anything like this, so I don't know what this stuff is. It's like lower hanging trees. Like it would almost fool you kind of like for grapevines, honestly. But they're not, because they're individual trees, and the grapevines grow pretty much down like a wired fence that they build for them to grow on. So these are clearly not grapes, but I don't know what they would be. Wait a minute. There's fruits on them. Maybe it is apples, folks, because Washington State is a big apple producer, and this would make sense that this has to be maybe the apple orchards, maybe. But I've never seen an apple tree that is that small. I mean, usually apple trees are a little bit larger than this.
There's a lesson to be learned here. As you can see, these trees have bore fruit, as you can see. That's because these were planted in nice deep ground.
Oh my God!
You don't want to plant your trees in shallow ground, or henceforth the tree will be lukewarm. And lukewarm trees don't bear fruit. Keep that in mind, people. This mysterious fruit here won't be bore unless you plant it and give it some of that miracle grow.
Man, you remember that from like our childhood, man? I was like, no way, man. Also, a cool fact about apples, by the way, folks. Apples in American history have always been incredibly abundant, but especially up in New England historically, around the area of the city of New York. So back in the very early 1900s, a lot of street vendors would peddle their wares and make their money, generally selling apples out of apple carts in the streets. And there were so many apples for sale in the city of New York that the city eventually got the moniker the Big Apple, because there were so many apples for sale on the streets of New York. And so if y'all didn't know, that's actually where the Big Apple name, no joke, actually comes from for New York City.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that personally.
Yeah,
I didn't know. I didn't know.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. School kids would get out of school back then, and they would go down to the apple vendor stands because the apple vendors would set up when they know the kids were getting out of school for recess, and they would sell kids like apples for like 2 cents or a nickel or something along those price lines. Because it
Is
was
that before or after the mob got involved?
oh, this is like way before the Italian mobs. Like this would have been the time of like the downfall of the Irish mobs. This was literally back when New York was dealing with like the slums still kind of from like the Tammany Hall times and the Irish mobs and all. And then that was all dissipating and the city was kind of going on an upturn. They were getting the overground rails and the subway and all everything during this time. But it was during that time that the apple vendors were the big deal and the city became known as the Big Apple.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. But anyways, enough of the rabbit holes about apples and Leavenworth and Washington State and everything. But a big thanks to you for the support and sharing that little bit of info about what the temperature is up in Washington. Y'all are lucky. It's just a little bit warmer. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, we're jumping into our next one here, which goes to none other than AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Mr. Bang Bang, for that generous support. And he said, visited Dunedin, New Zealand, in the South Island, to visit a New Zealand warship in a public open day. I was able to learn in-depth unclassified information about the CAM, the Common Anti-Air Modular Missile, and the CRAM, or CWIZ.
That is really cool. Now let's see if we can find this warship down here. This warship down here. Where in the world would it be? It's probably going to be out here somewhere. It's probably going to be out here. Yeah. Oh, that's a timber port right here, where they load up timbers. That's wild.
You know what's fascinating about that timber port right there? The guy who usually used to drive the ship, like way back at the very beginning of the timber trade, the guy's name was Tim. And he was very modest. He was not a very like showboaty type fella. He liked his boat to be very simplistic, very rusty. In fact, he liked a good bit of rust on the boat just to make it a little bit extra grimy. But the crazy part was his last name was Burr, so his name was Tim Burr. So that's how he got into the business to begin with. It ran in his blood. It was in the family.
Man, that's a very interesting story, man. I did not know that. Man, there was actually a guy. His name was Alexander Beef. Like, I'll tell you an interesting story. There was a guy, man, at one time named Alexander Beef, and he lived back in England back in the day. And he would get in so many fights with people. He would get in just absolute rows with people, just beat the hell out of them, have a whole bunch of petty drama and everything, that his name was associated with having a problem with someone else. And so nowadays, when the young ones get out in the street and they have issues with each other, they say, hey, what do you got a beef with me for? And they're once again referencing none other than Alexander Beef.
There's Alexander Graham Beef or something like that. You're about to do something like that.
I'm trying to find the.
You see, the whole reason that Alexander Graham Bell created the phone is because he had Alexander Graham Beef with another person on the street, so he needed to get a direct line to him so he could burn it down, and call up and stir up the beef a little bit extra. So he created the phone line so that way he could burn it straight down.
Man, 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 there was a guy who used to get on the phones, man, and he'd just bullshit to people all day long about all kinds of stuff. He'd just straight up lies. And so a lot of people started to say whenever they get those calls that they were phonies.
Damn. He's a phony. He called him all the time. He's a damn phony. They said, what's he calling me up for, sir? Get him off the line.
Man,
he's on the line playing fake phony games. It's phony like a baloney. Who says that anyway?
Man, at one point, man, there was like this president of the United States, and whenever he hears something that he didn't like, he just threatened to kill people, like give them the death penalty and stuff. And a lot of people got used to that sort of a deal, being told that they'd be given the noose and everything. And then they came up with the term fake news. Get it? Get it? Oh man, I'm crying myself up. Oh man. But anyways, where in the world is this ship, Matthew? Can we get the name of that ship again that's down here at Dunedin, so that way we can find this thing?
They didn't say the name of the ship, I don't think, but they said it was. They were looking at the CAM and the CRAM and the CWIZ. It was in New Zealand.
New Zealand warship. Well, we're in the South Island in New Zealand at Dunedin. Maybe it's down here on the coastline in this area instead of the bay. I'm just not seeing it, like it's I'm not doubting that it's here. It's just that I can't find it on the map. And usually we have to have a name for these things, otherwise they won't pull them up. And that's always the most annoying thing about Google is that it'll know what you're wanting to look for, but it won't help you at all, you know? But still, a big thanks to you once again for support, and really interesting to hear that you learned about those weapon systems, because that is a really interesting sort of a thing to hear, that you actually learned about that down there in Dunedin today, and I hope you had a fun time down there. And what does the city look like? I'm very interested now. Oh, dude, this kind of looks like Britain, honestly.
It kind of does. The road snakes. What can we do, people, in the 21st century to eliminate road snakes? Like, they're everywhere out here in Utah. They're obviously everywhere in the South, because I mean the road condition in the South is really bad. But road snakes everywhere. Is there not a better way?
There has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. Man, I was
You know, that's
walking.
what that Playboy guy said before you created the Playboy thing. He said there has to be a better way. So, and
I
then he
don't,
went on that nasty path.
bro. I don't think he found the better way. I think he found the worst way,
A
honestly.
better way to what? What was he talking about? I'm like, I guess his brain was somewhere else. I'm not familiar with it.
Man, honestly, man, he was on that grind, but not in the right way. Like not in the right way at all. But anyways, very interesting to hear about. And I got to thank you so much once again, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, for the support and sharing that with us. Very interesting to hear. But with that, we are going to be on to the next one. I got to say, folks, it's so sad to see that people are like, yes, the dad jokes are hitting extra lame tonight. But I guess
That's how
that's
you're
the
supposed to hit.
yeah, that is how they're supposed to hit. They are supposed to be extra lame. So I guess that's something we ought to be proud of, but at the same time, it's kind of hitting me with a tinge of sadness. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
So, see, the definition of a dad joke here, it's a simple, often predictable, I can attest, an intentionally corny joke, or a pun that typically elicits groans, moans,
Hey, yo.
or what the hell? Wait a minute, where does the definition come from? It says to come from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. What
if
the hell?
if someone makes a dad joke and someone moans, they need psychiatric help.
What
Like,
in the
who the
world?
hell moans over a dad joke? Like,
It says, I think the AI summary might have gotten this mixed up or something. I'm pretty sure that I'm almost certain that the Merriam-Webster dictionary is not saying anything about moans, dad jokes. What the hell, ayo? But also it said eye rolls too from the audience. It's intentionally corny though. So if it doesn't hit extra lame, then it's not a dad joke. But 54% said they're hitting extra lame. So thank you, I appreciate that.
and we thank y'all greatly. Thank God none of y'all are moaning over him. Like that would really be getting me. I'd be like, hey, yo, hold up. I think we'd have to resign from this whole business here if we ended up, in that sort of a deal. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that the best we can. A big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, let's see. Hokey Redneck said, "Is Matt drunk?" I don't drink. I don't drink, Hokey. I'm completely here, and also I live in Utah now. I can't drink. But anyways, jumping into our next.
We do drink, but it's swigs, and that's it's like we had a swig today, and it was really good actually. I got the one that's really sussly named along with Matthew, the Spring Fling. I'm not gonna lie though, that name is very off-putting for it to be such a tasty drink. Like, it was actually really good. But I guess in a way we do drink, but it's non-alcoholic. It's just sodas. Dirty sodas. I don't know what they're doing to the sodas though to make them dirty like that though. Like they got them little freaky ass sodas that they're selling out of the swigs. I don't really know how that works, but anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to, guess who? It is Hokey Redneck right now, and he puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Hokey, once again for the third support of the night. He said, "Is there an Amtrak station in Salt Lake City?"
Oh, is there? There is actually. The California Zephyr comes through Salt Lake City, and it stops at this station right here. The Front Runner and the Amtrak both come here, but I believe the Amtrak comes to. Actually, it's not Salt Lake. Actually, it is. There's the Amtrak, the California Zephyr right there with a very worn out looking P-42. But beyond that. Oh man, look at that, Matt. You remember that, don't you? The Superliners? Don't you remember the Superliner?
There was nothing super about it. I remember standing in the coach. I can't even show the picture. I literally took a selfie standing in the middle of that in the hallway. I was in such a foul way. I was in such a foul way. I was looking out the window, standing there in the hallway, right where the staircase goes up to the second level, thinking, when is this damn thing going to stop? Like I'm literally dying in here. Like I'm literally standing in the hallway dying, and then having to move out of the way every 2 seconds for somebody walking past to go to the bathroom or something like that. I'll be like, oh, this is miserable. I can't take it.
Meanwhile, I was having a blast. Honestly, I thought it was great. But there is there is an Amtrak stop in Salt Lake City. There's also one down in Provo. But the weirdest thing is that there is no Amtrak stop in Ogden, which is really bizarre because you would think there would be. But there isn't for now. They are going to get one soon because Amtrak is going to restart a service. I forgot the name of it, but it goes from Seattle to, I believe it's like Denver or something like that. It's an older service that they discontinued a long time ago, decades ago, and it's what deleted the service from Wyoming and Idaho, which are the only two states in the United States that, well, actually, the Amtrak does pass through Idaho. I think it's Nebraska. I think it's Wyoming, South Dakota, or Nebraska. It's a combination of the two out of those three states that Amtrak does not run through, and it's the only two states in the lower 48 that they don't service. But there's an Amtrak service that is going to be coming back to those states here within the next year or two. So Amtrak is once again beginning to stretch its legs and start getting on out there into the rest of America again. Really cool, honestly, because they're getting so much ridership these days, folks, that they're actually justifying opening up new routes, which is the first time in Amtrak's history that that's happening. So really cool. But with that, I hope that does answer your question well. And also, by the way, like, not to get into a huge tangent about this, but the California Zephyr and the Empire Builder are actually, along with the Coast Starlight, are considered to be the three best Amtrak routes for scenery and kind of the general experience. The Southwest Chief is also in there as well, but that's more desert-like. The California Zephyr goes in between Salt Lake City and Denver in that stretch of the route from here to Denver and back, and it travels through the entirety of the Rocky Mountains. A lot of people say that the scenery is world-class, along with the Empire Builder when it passes through the Cascades and stuff like that further on up north and Glacier National Park. I want to take that train from Salt Lake to Denver. I don't want to do the whole thing, though. Like, I don't want to go from Chicago all the way to Emeryville in California. I don't want to do that. I just want to take it from Salt Lake to Denver and back, because that train, like, the tickets are so coveted for that train that during certain seasons, like the winter and the summer, the tickets are just completely sold out for practically all seats through that part of the trip. So I want to go see it. I think it's got to be something for everyone to be getting tickets for it. But anyways,
Show the people. I got a picture taken by me that shows the spot on the train where I was standing and feeling so ill, so ill. Show them the picture right here, by the way.
It's the mid.
Literally, I was standing right there in that exact spot. I'm the one who took the picture. And I was looking out that window right there. And I was going, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to take this. This is so bad. And the bathroom was right there to the left in this nasty ass train car. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Nasty train car. I mean, it was not being cleaned well. This was not a clean train car. I did not like it. But I was like, kind of just get off this thing. It was literally out in the middle of nowhere, though. It was like we were out in the middle of like nowhere in California, like in the middle of the like woods or something like that. I don't even know where it was. It was past Vandenberg, up north. And I was like, I just want to get off this thing. And they wouldn't let you, well, they would let you off of it, but obviously you have nowhere to go from that point forward. So this is why I don't like the train, is for this reason right here.
So we kind of got the short end of the deal as well. Matthew has been told this before, but I haven't told you all this. Amtrak has this special superliner, and we were in it, and it's called the Transitional Sleeper. And the Transitional Sleeper is a very special superliner car because it was not refurbished when we got on this train. And every other Amtrak car had just been refurbished. All of the superliners have been. They're brand new and they're clean. Everything was redone except for the one we were in. Ours had the same upholstery in it for 25 years and had not been redone yet. And also, the reason why it's called a transition sleeper, this is an interesting part of it. Let me go pull up a picture of the Coast Starlight for y'all so that way y'all can see what I'm talking about here. Coast Starlight. Actually, let me just type in Amtrak Transition Superliner. It'll pull that up for sure. So this is, in a model form, the Transition Sleeper. So what this is, it's a very special Amtrak car because half of it is for paying passengers in sleeping cabins. The other half of it is sleeping cabins for the employees that are on the train, because they can't get off. Like, when their shift ends, they don't get off. They just sleep on the train and then wake up the next day. So it also has a special staircase up here at the front that gets you down here, because on a normal superliner, the walking level is actually up on the second level, so the door is way up at the top. On this one, it's down here, so that way they can walk into the baggage car that's right there. So that way it's on a level walking path, basically. So we were in that one, and the cabins looked like this. The modern ones look different. Let me see superliner interior. Let's see, interior. Let me see if I can get you all a picture of the refurbed interiors. Let's see. Let me put in superliner's sleeper interior.
Well, honestly, I was going to transition. I was going to transition right off that train, like, you know, walk like away from the train type deal. You know what I mean?
Man, bro, nah, man, you know what I mean? But this is what our cabins looked like, and every single other cabin on the train looked like this or like this, basically. So we did kind of get the short end of the stick as far as the coach we were put in. This was the only one that hadn't been redone. But outside of that, folks, it's not a bad experience. Don't let Matthew fool you. Well, some people like the train, some people don't. Matthew's one of the people who don't. But for the people who do like a quiet, enjoyable experience where you're not having to worry about the navigation and driving the car, and you just kind of get to sit back and look at the scenery, and then generally have everything figured out for you. You just get to enjoy looking around at the great outdoors. This is really the way to do it, in my opinion. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. One day, I do want to take the California Zephyr from Salt Lake to Denver. Let me see. Let's see. Let me go type that in here really quickly. Let me show y'all California Zephyr scenery. Let me see if I can show y'all here. Yes, here we are. Here's a whole bunch of pictures of the scenery you can get. So stuff like this, or that. You get all kinds of crazy scenery. It goes right through the middle of the Rocky Mountains. Really cool. I mean, like, it's an incredibly cool little trip. I mean, look at that. That is crazy.
I will say if the train wasn't so nauseating for me, and also if it wasn't so, you know, honestly, in my opinion, not very clean. Also, by the way, like, the cleanliness of the train, I could have overlooked that, but also at the same time, though, it was something about, like, trying to sleep on the train was not it. Like, I'm not a person that gets motion sick. I've been on planes, ships, etc. I don't get motion sick, and I usually tolerate this stuff very well. There was something about the train, trying to go to sleep on that train, that did me so wrong. I was out for 30 minutes or an hour or something on that rack that they have in that little small room. And I woke up and I was like, what in the hell has happened? Something is very wrong. And I literally stood up and it was over from that point forward. I was cooked. I was finished. I was more cooked than Russia's economy. I was standing in the middle of the aisle. Standing in the middle of the aisle thinking, I got, like, what, 20 more hours in this train right here, and I feel like the time is passing by so slow. It feels like when you get sick and you wake up and it's only been like 1 minute you've been asleep and it feels like it's been hours. I felt like that, and I had to withstand the whole thing. When I got off in Seattle, I could have literally kissed the ground, that nasty ground. I could have kissed it at that point. I was just so happy to get off that train. It was just terrible. I'm telling you, terrible.
It pains me, folks, to think that his experience was bad. Because on the first day we were on it, when we were going through California, at the end of the day, we got done with dinner, and I was like, so how are you liking it, man? He was like, oh, dang, it's great. I'm loving it. Like, this is actually really cool. And then he went to sleep, and he got sick, and then he hated it. You know, like, the cleanliness thing, I will agree. The car we were in was quite old. No amount of cleaning was going to outdo the 25 years of use that car had. But it's a shame that Matthew got sick, because he would have had a positive outlook, I think, if he hadn't gotten sick on the train. Me, honestly, I didn't have a problem sleeping on the train. If anything, it was actually really cool, because we were kind of up closer to the engines. So when you were sleeping, you could kind of hear, like, the faint sound of the whang, 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 and you hear the tracks under you, you know, like that little, like, kind of like whooshing kind of sound that they make, and it's like slightly rocking a little bit, really lightly for the most part. I thought it was nice.
Wait, and then I remember the torture got worse on this train for me. It got worse. Like, this was the trip from hell, like the nightmare from hell for getting on this train for me right here. I remember after I stood up and I was like, I don't know how much longer I'm able to tolerate this. I was like, I'm going back to sleep. I'm going to try. Like, I'm going to get on the rack. I'm going to go to sleep on that hard mattress that got on that rack. I'm going to crawl back
Bro,
up
the mattress wasn't too bad.
I'm going to crawl back up there. I'm going to try my damnedest to go unconscious on that rack. So I climb back up there, and the little door closes to the little thing. So you close the door, you climb up on the rack. I'm like up there, like dying, but I'm like, okay, I think I might be able to semi go unconscious here, at least a little bit to get some relief. So then once I barely get unconscious, then I hear somebody screaming in the middle of the train. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? They hear somebody yelling about going to the bathroom and doing number 2, and then I smell this nasty shit smell going through the hallway.
God.
I'm like,
Wait a minute.
what the hell
Dude.
is that smell? Somebody reeked like dude walking through the hallways. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. You can't add that smell on top of this motion sickness. I'm gonna die in here. And then I literally was like dying at that point. I was like, the smell was killing me. The motion sickness was killing me. Then I couldn't like go back to sleep at that point because the person was screaming in the hallway. And then they got put off the train at some point.
Dude, wait a minute. Hang on, man. Hang on. I remember it. Don't they know I'm handicapped? Oh my God.
Yeah,
like,
it was that person. It was that person.
And they bought a ticket. Like the attendant came by and checked their ticket, and this stupid idiot had bought a non-handicap room, which is on the second floor of the Superliner, mind you. The handicap rooms are at the bottom floor. They're handicap accessible. So this idiot bought a non-handicap accessible room, knew it when they got the ticket, and then screamed about it when they got on the train because they wouldn't allow this idiot to get in the handicap room when she didn't pay for the ticket and wasn't assigned that room. And it's like, that's kind of your problem if you're that stupid to not pay attention to what room you're buying. So then they were climbing up the stairs the whole time. Don't they know I'm handicapped? Oh God! Oh! And then they get up there and then they start yelling, "I gotta take a shit! I gotta take a shit!" And then at this point, I'm about to open up my door and be like, "Shut your damn mouth!" But then they went into the bathroom. And it just reeked for like 5 minutes afterwards. Like, just terrible.
Man, I was literally, I'm not gonna lie, like I was like, it was one of those moments where it was like I was legit about to crash out. Like I was sitting on that thing, and after they went on for a long time too. It was like 5 or 10 minutes they were doing this. The smell, the motion sickness, the yelling in the hallway. I was on the verge of like 30 seconds. I was about to crash out. I was like, I'm about to crash out this door in a minute and go like finding this person in a minute, and they're going to be quiet. I'm telling you, they are not going to keep screaming. That smell is going to stop.
Oh, man.
But they literally 30 seconds before I crashed out, they went silent. I don't know what happened. I think they got put off the train or something, or they got settled down.
They just got quiet. Like they got over the whole deal of, don't they know I'm handicapped and I got to take a shit? And then they just went quiet. And then the next day, they were still on there, man. And this person, y'all, was such an asshole to the attendant. Like, every time the attendant would come by, "Are you serving breakfast?" "Well, yes, ma'am." "Well, why wouldn't you tell me?" It's like, well, they already, like, they had an announcement for it in the morning. Were you not paying attention, you stupid? Like, it's like I was, like, the whole time, like, I remember at some point, I think I said something about SeaWorld's missing a whale or something like that, like, pretty much within earshot of their cabin, because I was like, you're just an ass, like, an absolute ass. Well, you ought to feel terrible for how you're treating all these people on this train, like, all of the attendants who are working on here. They've been working on here for 36 straight hours. You're going to be an ass to them? But, you know, anyways, that's
why the train trip, by the way, I was telling my little bits and pieces there to tell you all what was going on in the thing, because at first people were saying in the live chat, "Oh, you know, Matt Soft, you didn't like the uncleanliness." I was overlooking that. Like, I was like, okay, whatever. There's a little bit of dirt on the floor. There's a little bit of, like, the seats aren't, you know, the seats really need to be upholstered about 20 years out of date or something. At least they look like it. But I could have overlooked that junk. I'm like, you know, whatever. Like, it's not that clean. Whatever. You're only on the train for like a day or two or something. But it was the other sickness and then all that screaming that was coming from that person that got on the train. That made it miserable. And then after that, like, they have these things called like fresh air stops or something, where people that smoke can get off the train and go smoke outside or something. So every time those were coming up, it was like a miracle, like, was about to happen. It was like, they are stopping this damn train. I can walk off, actually physically get off this train of horrors and go outside and actually have a minute to feel good. And the relief would be instant. It was like, it was instant. Like you were standing out there on the little platform. I felt fine. At one point, I was like, I think I'm just going to go like run off from here and go find a rental car or something and get the hell out of here. But I forced myself to get back on the train because I didn't know where I was. So got back on the train, endured the whole thing, got to Seattle, and swore I was never going to ride a train again. That was it.
And I mean, honestly, man, though that person was a bit of a fluke because Kachulian kind of said it without me saying it. This person, folks, that was like screaming, "Don't they know I'm in it?" It was like a my 600-pound life kind of a person, and like they weren't like basically the reason why they're saying that they're handicapped is because they're so heavy that their knees buckle under their own weight because they let themselves get to that point. And I'm like that like. It's like you can't sit there and buy a non-handicapped room and then make that everyone's problem when you get there. Because it's like you get the room you're assigned on your ticket. And this person was a piece of work. They got off somewhere in Oregon. I forgot where. It was north of Klamath Falls, but they were a piece of work right there. And they got on the train at midnight, like at some station in California. It was like near to Sacramento or something like that. I was like, why the? Huh?
I got something even more real quick. I just remembered this one too. Like to add to the mixture, I also found another way I could get relief. I was like, okay, the fresh air stops is one way to get relief. I can get off the train for like 15 minutes. I can kind of recover, get a little fresh air, and get back on. Then on top of that, I found another way. You can go to the observation car at night. I'm not sure if it's technically allowed or not, but they were okay with it. So I think they could tell I was like on the verge of death. They probably looked at me in the face and was like, oh God, let him through, like quick, like let him through up there or something. I remember I went up there. It was early in the morning. It was like 3 or 4 in the morning or something. I went all the way to the front of the train to the observation car, went in there, and I was like, what the hell? Like in my brief insanity from being sick, I was like, what the hell is happening here? There was like alcohol bottles all over the ground. They were all over the seats. There was people laying upside down in the chairs and stuff like that. It looked like you were going through the Tenderloin or something in San Francisco. I was like, what the hell is happening in here? But I was like, hell, I'm so sick. I don't care. So I like stepped through all these people like with all these alcohol bottles around them and stuff, and made my way up there. I just sat right in the middle of them. Like, I got to look out the window or something. Like, I'm like, I'm honestly, like, no joke, like some shady folks up here or something. I'm like, I don't care. I got to see the window. But I just sat up there, and then I finally left the thing, and then they cleared out. I mean, I'm not even sure where they went. They went somewhere, but they cleared out. Maybe so. They cleared out, and then they were gone for the middle of the day when it was daytime. You didn't even know they're in there. So kind of wild.
So the way Amtrak kind of does it, folks, this is the unofficial policy of Amtrak. The official policy is that you're only supposed to be in the observation car for 2 hours, but after hours, which is basically at night, they don't really give a damn. So everyone can go in the observation car for however long they want. So a lot of the coach class people use that to basically get kind of like a free upgrade, in a sense, to a window-facing seat. And so they just sit there all night long and just look out the window, or they sleep in the chairs. So that's what Matthew was dealing with. But once kind of like the opening hours start again, like the operating hours technically kind of start again on the train during daylight, they clear them all out. They're like, all right, like I'll say this, folks, on trains, like the class is quite clear, like between like the bedroom or first class and the coach class. Like the attendants come in, all right, cattle, back to the coach cars, and they like get them all back into the coach cars. And the coach
some of the people were sketchy, like so they were acting sketchy too. Like I'm not just saying, like I mean they were actually acting kind of sketchy. Like some of these people, like they're sitting there sipping on like those little mini bottles of Jack or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure. Did they sell them on the train or something? Is that where they got them from?
No, they bring those on. They don't have those on the train.
Well, yeah, they brought their own stuff. Apparently, they came prepared, but they came in there and they were sipping on it. One guy was like sort of talking a little wild to some other guy up there. It was like early in the morning too, and they were acting real sketch. I was like, what in the hell is like this is kind of wild. And then also at one point, one of the conductors or security people or something went running up there like shortly after I left for some reason. I think they had like an incident with somebody or something where they had to like put them off.
But I'm going to show you all this because this is going to blow a lot of people's minds here. This is why there are people like that riding the train. So, Denver to Salt Lake. And we're going to depart tomorrow. We're going to come back on, say, the next day after, so the 30th. So, it's a round trip for one person. Find a train. Boom. Put that in. 1 second. It's going to... Oh, at least one portion of the trip sold out. Okay, we'll do this later on in the year. We'll do it here to... here. All right, done. Find trains. So, a coach car, 14-hour trip, by the way, 14-hour trip all the way from Denver to Salt Lake, $52 for a coach class seat. That's it.
Could you like technically like live on the train? Like
Pretty much.
if you could, yeah, you could pretty much like, hop on one, like spend the night after you get a ride or something like that, then hop back on it again. I mean, but it's $52 a go. I mean, that's not, that's not exactly just like
Hell, man,
chump
you
change or something like that.
spend the day. Like this train gets in at, I think it's Salt Lake at 11:15 at night. Dude, you get out there at the night, you spend the day like busking in a city, you make another $50, buy another ticket, and when the train comes back in the afternoon, you hop on it again and go back the other way, and you kind of got a place to sleep. That's something like the ticket prices, by the way, are set by rates, I believe, by the Federal Rail Administration for Amtrak. So that's why they're absurdly low, especially for coach cars. This is insanely cheap to go that distance between Denver to Salt Lake. In a car, that would cost probably like $150 in gas. On a bus, it would be even more expensive. Coach class seats on a train are literally the cheapest way to get around this country, even still to this day. The private rooms, however, can get kind of expensive. Like if you want a full bedroom, that's $790, but a roomette's $321, a round trip, mind you, which is still quite cheap because included in the first class fares, which is the cheapest is $321 for a roomette, you get 3 meals, and they're huge meals, by the way, and they're actually pretty decent. You also get a free drink at dinner, included with your meal, and you also get first class treatment. So you have an attendant there that takes care of anything that you want. So you can get room service to your roomette or your private room if you wanted to, if you didn't want to go in the dining room, and all that sort of stuff. So it comes with a decent amount of amenities to get that sort of affair. And on top of that, it's it's actually a total round trip of 28 hours. 28 hours of transport for $321 in first class service with your own private room. It's not really that bad, actually. In Britain, that would get you from London to like Oxford first class one way, or no, actually 2 ways, I think, these days. So that's actually a pretty decent rate for that amount of time and that kind of a luxury on a train. But anyways, folks, enough of that stuff about the train. It's time for us to get back to some more questions. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So I see a lot of people enjoy those stories, by the way. Quite interesting stories. Maybe one day I'll show the pictures, but honestly, I'm not going to lie. Probably the roughest I've ever looked in my life on that train. Like I was barely hanging in. But jumping into our next super chat here. This one goes to QWERTY Man, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, QWERTY Man, for that support. He said, Celsius water freezes at 0 and boils at 100 degrees. Most common element on the earth.
And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support. And very interesting to hear about that. And I gotta say that is very interesting to hear that that's the most common element on Earth. And a huge thanks to you once again for support. I hope this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to let's see here. This one goes to Hokey Redneck, who puts in a 20. Let's see here. It has the same message that QWERTY Man had. Let's see here.
What's going on?
Hold on. Did he put the same one? Let's see here. I know he didn't put the same one. Something's awry. Let me see what's going on here. So for some reason I copied and pasted on his, but what Hokey Redneck was saying for real though, he's actually mixed up the chats here. Hokey Redneck said, "Are you kids gonna learn how to ski?"
I would want to. But I've actually heard that the mountains around here are apparently monopolized under one company, and they've jacked up the costs of everything up there to insanely high prices, to where we might not be able to financially manage skiing. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. And even if we can, apparently the waiting lines for the ski lift are like several hours now, so it's longer than like a line at Disney for like the Haunted Mansion, apparently these days. So we'll have to see. I would love to myself, but I don't know if it's actually going to be possible or not because of the cost. But a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to the Wolfman, who puts in a 10. He said, "I'm from Wisconsin, and I'm the phrasing, the Wolfman, the phrasing caught me off guard for a minute. I was like double checking this to make sure it was something crazy. But the Wolfman said, "From Wisconsin, I'm about to get pounded by about 10 inches of snow. Stay safe out there, fellow Midwesterners. Don't travel if you don't have to."
Pounded by 10 inches? What the hell? It's like the Wolfman. What the? Well, I got to say, that is a lot of snow, actually. And I hope that everyone stays safe up there, though, up in the Midwest and around that area, because The snow is a very deceptive sort of a deal, you know. I haven't seen a lot of it in my life, but when I have, it's very scary, really. In the South, we'd actually go into terror fits whenever we'd see a little bit of snow out there on the street or on the side of the road or anything. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Matthew, is Hackney and Rhinelanders from Rhinelander, Wisconsin?
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure.
What does this place look like? Yo, that's the Rhinelander.
Wow.
What the hell is that thing?
Really? What is that? The hell?
Oh, yo, they just got a
that's a velociraptor.
Yeah, from Jurassic Park. But yeah, that's the Rhinelander right there. Apparently, then they got the Triceratops. That one's kind of geeky.
Looks like it's got a problem. that thing just got a good look at the Ukraine so-called peace plan and said, "Oh,
bro, that's it. We give what to who? Like it's like what?" But, dude, and then we got the Demon Rhinelander right here. And then we got the old refinery. Actually,
that must be where it came from. It was a byproduct.
I'm not gonna lie, that kind of looks more like a paper mill. I can't really tell what that is, but and then they got the engine of the Lake Lumber Company, and then they got the Rhinelander again. The Rhinelander's about to kill that poor kid. Be careful, kid. Don't get close to that thing. It looks like it's Jeremy. And then what the hell is
this thing has a name. This thing has a name, by the way. You see the name in the live chat right there?
Hold up. Let me type that in. So, wow, that was like the weird, like most out of time deal. What the hell? So, the hodag in American folklore is a fearsome critter resembling a large bullhorn carnivore with a row of thick curved spines down its back. The hodag was said to be born from the ashes of cremated oxen, as the incarnation of the accumulation of abuse the animals had suffered at the hands of their masters. This is kind of like a woke creature to be from like the 1800s, man. It's like animal abuse created this monster. Let's see. The history of the hodag is strongly tied to Rhinelander, Wisconsin, where it was claimed to have been discovered. The hodag was figured prominently in early Paul Bunyan stories. That was never included in the Disney retelling of Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, I don't think that would have been Disney quality right there, putting a demon in it.
Dude, whoa, bro, this guy's got a Browning Auto 5 and he's aiming it at the hodag statue that they got, bro. Everyone else has got pitchforks. This bro whipped out a full 12 gauge for the picture. Okay, that's a little crazy.
Damn. That was 1893. They didn't play around then. They pulled out the shoddy when they saw something sauce.
Dude, so the whole thing was come up with a prankster. They knew that from the outset. And then the group reportedly
they used the dynamite to kill it.
Bro, they were throwing sticks of dynamite at a stuffed animal, bro. They were like, kill it, bro. What the hell? Bro, Wisconsin's wild. And a photograph of remains of the charred beast was released to media. It was the fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor-sharp claws on the earth. It became extinct after its main source, all-white bulldogs, became scarce in the area. What type of story is this? Like, what is this stuff? Let's see. Co-creator of the monster created additional mythos surrounding it and published a book. The hodag can be born when an ox is verbally abused by its handlers, and when it dies, its body is not burnt for 7 years. What?
They were really coming up with some crazy stuff back in these times. Like they were just coming up with stuff, and people were like, "Yeah, we're gonna believe that."
Bro, the people out here in Rhinelander, Wisconsin were just like bored one day and they're like, yeah, we're just going to come up with a monster that's created when you cuss out your ox. Like, it's like, okay. And that's apparently what it is. I'm not going to lie. Like, that's a pretty neat piece of local lore. Like, pretty neat that they just kind of came up with their own deal. I didn't even know of this thing until right now, but yeah, that's you
know, Utah's lore is out in the Uinta area of Utah. They have the skinwalkers out there, and not the prostitutes, but like the skinwalkers. You know those things,
dude,
those creatures.
Prostitutes are night walkers, man. We've been
or night walkers.
Yeah.
Is that what they call them?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Man, because that's like a common like catchphrase deal, man. Like any crime thing, yeah, there's a night walker out here or a lot lizard or something, you know. But anyways, go ahead.
Oh, the lizard. Yeah, but anyways, Uintah out here is like that's where the skinwalkers are apparently at, or whatever. At least that's the legend in the area. I think it was the native tribes or something like that that like told people about it, and then the other people kind of ran with it. I think to a certain degree, but there's like a whole thing out here. There's like a bunch of like alleged UFO sightings and stuff like that that happen out here. Like some weird activity. I haven't been out there personally. We didn't come in that way when we came into Salt Lake City, so I'll be curious to see it.
I would be curious to see it too. I wonder about that. And also down in Tennessee in Memphis, that's actually where you get the old scary the lot lizards. It's a part of mythology within the area that at night times around truck stops, these very scary people will come up to your window and they'll go, "Hey, I'll give you something for $5." And it's very scary. That's a Memphis folklore, by the way. I don't know if it's real or not, but a lot of truckers swear to that story when they're at the truck stops at night. The night walkers and the lot lizards, they come wandering around. Very scary thing. In Alabama, we I don't know what we had in Alabama. I don't think we had anything really. I can't even come up with something for a joke, honestly.
I watched a documentary on this guy's channel that I watch quite a bit. Who does actually pretty good stories and stuff. He does some wild stories, but his name is Tommy G. He goes around doing like in real life, like he goes to sketchy places, by the way, like really sketchy places,
Oh
and does these
yeah,
like
yeah.
documentaries. He did one on like he's actually done a bunch of them actually on like documenting the lives of like prostitutes and stuff like that in certain places. I didn't know all the lingo that goes on with that. They've got the prostitutes,
So I mean, you
they
asked
got
me
the
where I knew that
johns.
terminology from. You watched a whole documentary on prostitutes.
Well, they didn't call them that. I didn't hear them called that on the thing. But they say they have the prostitutes, they have the johns, they have the hoes, they have the I think they said tricks. I think it was another one or something like that. It's like a whole like dictionary for like that whole thing and stuff like that. It's just an interesting thing.
I didn't know any of that. But you know, I've heard of the more common phrases that came from the South. But like you know, it's how it is down here. Let me pull up scary folklore of Alabama. Do we have anything like special to the state of Alabama that when we were there? Oh, so that's kind of lame. We had this thing called the white thing. I've never heard of it, but that's apparently like an Alabama
Mhm.
folklore thing. I'm not even kidding. That's apparently our horror creature is that. I'm not even
They
gonna
have a
pull that
picture
up.
of it.
I'm not even gonna pull that up. I'm not even gonna look into
I'm
that
about to say.
because I just started to realize what that might actually be, and I think we're just gonna avoid that one entirely. But what does Utah have? Let's see. Scary.
Skinwalkers.
Well, I mean, we got more than that out here, right? Oh, damn,
I
they
don't
got a
have it. They have
million.
it.
Bro, they got a million. Apparently, Utah folklore includes seagulls. The gulls. Bro, the gulls.
Bro,
Bro,
that's no. I saw those the other day.
the Voodoo Caves, Devil's Highway. Is that Devil's Highway where the Skinwalker thing is at?
I don't know.
Skinwalker Ranch. Well, there's that. Flo the Ghost.
Fio. What does that say?
Uh, Fido what? Where?
Fio?
This one?
No, that one that says something about the ghost. What does it say before it?
Flo the Ghost.
Flo, like spelled like the insurance spokesperson
Yeah,
on
like
that
Flo for
progressive commercial.
Progressive. Yeah.
Flo the ghost. They go, whoa! You want to save some money on car insurance today?
So let's see here. Oh wow, the Mormons have like their whole own folklore thing from here. Um, the Bear Lake monster. Oh, that's up near Bear Lake. Cool, I know where that is. That's up here. It's right here. That's this lake. Huh, interesting. So there's apparently a monster there. There's a whale in the Great Salt Lake. Don't know how it's living in there, but it is.
That's a classic myth, isn't it? If there's a big body of water, there's always some creature in it, like the Loch Ness monster. They got something in the Salt Lake too. If there's water, there's gonna be something in it. Like somebody's got to come up with something.
Man, they're like, oh look, dude. It just gets people out there on the water, dude. That's great for boat rental companies, man. Like you run a boat, you see the whale. They know that there's no whale out there, but they're gonna say it. The Lost Roads mine. also known as the Josephine Mine, is a mine that is supposed to be
That's not the Uinta area.
yeah,
The
apparently,
Uinta area is like folklore central out there. Like they say there's something to it. I don't know if I believe it.
and this one's in Duquesne County too, the Moon Lake monster out in Moon Lake, down here in Duquesne somewhere. So,
You said the Moon Lake
Starvation
monster.
Reservoir.
You said the Moon Lake monster.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this Moon Lake.
I think
right
I knew
here.
a girl like that in high school.
Oh, and then we got the North Shore monster, like from the northern part of the Great Salt Lake. But it's apparently got a crocodile-like body and the head of a horse. So that's. Then they got Old Ephraim, which is a large grizzly bear. That one was real apparently, and it was killed in 1923. So I guess that wasn't too scary because they just shot it. So
What they what it looked like.
I don't know. So yeah, they don't have pictures of it. They just blasted the thing with no pictures or anything.
I
Um,
don't buy it.
let's see.
You know how people are with their stories like big fish and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
they go out and catch like the 200-pounder or something like that, and then there's no picture, no evidence of it, and stuff like that. And they're like, "Yeah, trust me, bro, I caught that 200-pounder tuna." It's like, "Oh no, you didn't."
Man, honestly. And then we got Saltaire Sally. Oh, this is like a modern one. Apparently, the remains of a dead body of a 19-year-old woman that was found near Salt Lake City, Utah in October of 2000. And the death remains an unsolved case. So apparently it's now a part of folklore around here. And then they got skinwalkers, which we've talked about a decent bit. And then there's also the water baby.
The matter, baby.
What's the matter, baby? Like, nothing, sugar. How about you, man? Man, what the hell is this one? These entities are believed to inhabit bodies of water such as springs, ponds, and streams, often appearing as infants whose cries are considered an omen of impending disaster. In some traditions, they are described as small creatures who lure people to their deaths and are said to eat children. Well, I mean that's one hell of a story. Like I don't
That's
know.
crazy. That's wild work. It's appearing as an infant, luring in children. What kind of children run toward other infants?
Dude, if I was out in the woods and some baby like walked on two legs up to me and went, "Giggle gaga, follow me," I'd be like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm sorry. I'm gonna like you're just gonna have to go where you go. Like, you know, if you can't find your parents, that's on you. Sorry. It's like I'm gone. I'm gonna see you around." Because if a baby is out in the middle of the woods, folks, and it's walking on two legs quite proficiently with no one around, and it seems to be luring you somewhere, that ain't no baby. I mean, like, that's just common sense. I mean, like, no baby has that kind of sense, especially off in the middle of nowhere. You know, so I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to leave him behind. But but interesting stories, and also someone said we have the jackalope out here, which is also a thing from this area. What is the? Oh, that's the.
I've known a
that's
few
the-
jackalopes in my day.
Dude, that's the horned rabbit. You know, the rabbits that they put the horns on? These.
Oh, those. You know, that's the main profession of the jackalope is a YouTuber. Like I know a lot of jackalopes that are YouTubers.
Man, honestly, man, truthfully. You know, it would be cool if these things really existed. They actually, like, not these have, like, a fungus that kills them. Unfortunately, that's a real thing. But I would like to see a jackalope with like the real horns like that. That'd actually be kind of like a neat concept, like a horned bunny. It's pretty cool, really. Or a rabbit. That's actually a rabbit, not a bunny. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to another longtime channel legend. It is Chef Danny B, and he puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Chef Danny B, for that support. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here, and I hope y'all had a great Thanksgiving." And it was pretty good. He said, "Mine was good, of course. Ended up cooking a lot of food, and did Enforcer Matt show you my rap from an AR and LT LSA?"
No, he didn't. He didn't show me that. I'll have to look at that, Chef Danny B. I always like to see a nice AR from time to time. And we did have a pretty good Thanksgiving. We didn't have like a Thanksgiving feast, but Matthew was pretty handy with a stove, and he cooked up a beef rigatoni, which I consider to be a pretty damn good Thanksgiving meal. It was delicious. And then we went for a little walk around, and then we went for a drive and all that. And so it was basically, it was a very small Thanksgiving, but it was a good one. Nonetheless, I had nothing to complain about. I thought it was pretty good. But I got to say, a big thanks to you so much for the support, Chef Danny B, and being a longtime viewer and old guard of the channel. And great to have you here tonight on Black Friday. And I thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't. be able to make this thing possible, keep it running, and hopefully see a wrapped AR. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, is there anything wrong with showing a picture of the AR that you sent me? Because you sent me a picture of it. I saw it and I gave a reaction to it. But can we show that, or is YouTube going to have a problem with that?
No, I don't think they'd have a problem with it. We can probably look at it.
All right, let me grab it. Let's see here. Gotta send it over. There we go. It is a pretty sick wrap. I've never had any of my rifles wrapped before. I usually keep them in the stock color or whatever they come in, the Cerakote. But it looks very cool though. I like it. It's like a aqua camo wrap.
Oh, cool. That's almost like a navy tricolor, honestly. That's really cool. I like that. And I like the American flag you put behind it, too. Really classy looking. I like that. Really nice. And I gotta say, oh, is that a... Oh, I thought that was a binary trigger there for a minute. I was like, wow, look at that.
Oh, no.
Well, it's just the ones where, you like pull the trigger back and it fires, and then when you release it, it fires.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. It's not that.
Those are illegal,
Yeah, it's not that.
But
It's normal.
But still, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Chef Danny B. And a massive thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to make this thing a reality day in and day out. And so a humongous thanks once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ari Sawini, who puts in a $25 support. And thank you very much, Ari, as well, for that support, and also being a long-time channel legend as well. And Ari said, hope you had a great Thanksgiving, not celebrated here in Australia, and LSA.
Hey, we did have a great Thanksgiving, and I gotta say, unfortunately, you don't celebrate it in Australia, but then again, it's a very regional holiday here to America. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and keep this thing running on the day in and day out. So a huge thanks to you once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Show Intel, and thank you very much, Show Intel, for that $10 support. They said thanks for the reliable information.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we always love to give out reliable information. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Matthew Parks. And thank you very much, Matthew, as well, for that 10, and also helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 10 from Fog37, also known as Bobo Uzala. And he said, keep the lights on.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we will keep the lights on thanks to you. Thanks to you, the lights will remain on here in Salt Lake City in Utah. Gotta say, the lights keeping on here, very important. The heat keeping on here, really, really important. And so a big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Wolfman, who puts in a 10. And the Wolfman said, Wisconsin is full of odd and wacky lore. And also, the iron ore you're looking for is taconite. It's made by mixing low-grade iron ore powder with clay and is rolled into marble-sized pellets.
And I saw a lot of people saying that in the chat, and they're right. These are taconite pellets. Kind of looks like horse dung. Or more so deer dung, like from a white-tailed deer, honestly. But it's very interesting, folks, because we started to run out of iron ore around the 1960s, and so a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of universities in the United States, some of the top scientists in the country, they came together to figure out how to take the taconite ore, which is basically useless throughout most of history, and to turn it into something that actually was usable to make pig iron and steel. So they came up with this. So what they do is that they take the taconite and they crush it up into a whole bunch of tiny little pieces, and then they send it through a whole bunch of special machinery that takes it, clumps it with clay, and then it turns that clay into these little marble-shaped pellets. And then they load these up into tens of thousands of tons onto the Great Lake freighters, like the Edmund Fitzgerald, which actually was made to transport, I believe, taconite ore or ore pellets. And then they ship that around the Great Lakes to the steelworks in places like Gary, Indiana, right here. And you can actually see the loading piers around here where they would have loaded it. I think they still do. And then the taconite pellets eventually get turned, along with limestone and coke and a whole bunch of other stuff, into steel, which we then use out here in the world. So really cool thing, honestly, with how that worked, because I was listening to how steel making works and all the different science behind it and how things have worked. And I was like, wow, that is so interesting, taconite pellets. Like, there's a whole process in just even getting the iron to a steel mill in the first place. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Craig Jones. And Craig puts in a $22 support. And thank you very much, Craig, for once again supporting the channel. And we do appreciate that. And I don't think there's a comment attached to it, actually, but we do appreciate that very, very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you massively for the support, Craig Jones. You didn't throw in a comment, but we are massively appreciative, and folks like you help us to keep this thing running day after day. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brit M1381, who puts in a 10. And they said, hello, Enforcers, and I appreciate all the lives while I get that shmoney. And I'm not sure why, but I can't send Super Chats or stickers on my main account at Britain M111. But much love to the LSA Army.
Hey, and a big shout out to you, and a massive thanks to you for the support. I don't know why that's happening. YouTube has glitches like that sometimes on some accounts where people can't throw in super chats. I don't know why. Like, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of that over years as to why that happens sometimes. But a huge thanks to you once again for supporting the channel nonetheless and helping it to keep on running. And a massive shout out to you and the entirety of the LSA for helping to make this thing a reality every single day and every single night. So a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Exman, and Tom puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Tom. He said, want to watch good crime mystery solved about a poor Vietnam vet from Provo that went criminal. See Deep Family Secrets. It's the D.B. Cooper hijacker that happened here in Seattle, Thanksgiving of 1971. And did they identify him? Like, they actually identified who that was? I thought it was still an unsolved mystery.
Man, isn't that the guy who hijacked the plane, and when it was flying over Oregon or just like south of Seattle or something, he jumped out?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the area that he jumped out, but he allegedly had a whole parachute. He had a whole plan. He apparently just got away. Like, I'm not sure if they actually solved it.
Honestly, dude, that's crazy. But that is really interesting here. Like, if that's actually where the guy was from, that's wild. And I got to thank you for the support. And I'll try and look into that and see about watching it sometime around, because it actually does sound pretty interesting. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and also for sharing that. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bryce Knees, and he puts in a 5. He said, if you haven't had Cafe Rio and SLC yet, highly recommend. And screw Putin, LLT, LSA.
Cafe Rio. Let's take a look at the location.
That's like a chain restaurant, I think.
Oh, it sure is. Let's take a little look at it. Cafe Rio. This looks a lot like Costa Vida.
Costa Vida.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Dude, they got the same container for the chips. I think this is like just a very similar thing to Costa Vida. I think this is basically the same thing, actually.
It looks identical. It looks very close.
Dude, that's
yeah, it looks
like
very
Costa
close.
Vida. That's basically a Costa Vida. We'll have to
It's
try
classic sweet pork. They have sweet pork too.
Maybe they got
That's crazy.
rebranded.
Maybe.
Let's see. Cafe.
I mean, that is so close. It's almost hard to believe.
I'm going to drop down here. We're going to find out. So let's see. That's in 2022. Huh. That's interesting. Let me go pull this up. Is Costa Vida
It says they are not the same company, but they're closely related competitors with a history of rivalry. Apparently, there was a lawsuit that happened back in like early 2000s. Apparently, the case was settled. It says. While their offerings are very similar, they have different themes. Cafe Rio is more traditional Mexican restaurant, while Costa Vida has a coastal beachy theme.
That's like literally the only difference, because basically their offerings are identical.
Yeah, it's really very close. Also, it looks like apparently it's a bad rivalry, like nasty, like between those two companies right there. Like legit. It's not like a friendly rivalry. It appears to be a nasty one.
Man, when the workers from Cafe Rio see the guys from Costa Vida, they're getting off work, they throw hands.
Man, I don't know about that, but they're out here really competing hard.
Man, honestly, man, I would wonder. I'm just kidding, by the way. Obviously that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. That's not real. It's in your imagination. It can't hurt you. Don't worry. Don't panic. It's all right. It's okay, everyone. It's fine. It's fine. But Anyways, folks, that's really interesting. But I'll have to give that a shot. We've had Costa Vida a couple of times, but I got to be honest with y'all, folks. There are so many different food options here in Salt Lake City. It's really hard to go to the same place twice because there's so many different things to try. Which is really such a nice reprieve because back in Alabama, we ate at the same like 3 restaurants every week multiple times. So that got really old really quick. Like today I had South Korean food, which was, I'm not going to lie, kind of pricey, and I won't be able to eat there again often because of the price. But it was insanely good, and I've never had South Korean food before, so it was definitely a change. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to none other than Jerry Kovacs. And thank you very much, Jerry Kovacs, for that $5 support. And we do appreciate that very much. I do not see a comment attached, but thank you very much for that. And we also have another 5 from Show Intel. He said numerous drones heading to Kyiv right now.
And we did hear about that. There is an ongoing air attack at the moment in Ukraine, and we're going to keep an eye on it. So a huge thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
Let's see here. Let's see here. Okay, I thought I had breaking news there for a minute, but I don't think I do. Yeah, I don't have any breaking news right now, but let's see here. Yeah, none. Okay, anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to none other than JBNE Jelk. How do you say his name again?
Unfortunately,
Hello?
unfortunately, I don't know. Yeah.
So he told me last night, but I can't remember. I'm having a hard time remembering this one. It's such complicated pronunciation. JB Jolk. Please tell me again how to say your name. But he said, "Good evening, enforcers. If nuclear war broke out, is there any targets that would be hit here in Australia? Thank you, and LSA."
Most likely not. Basically, everything in the southern hemisphere is safe and will most likely not be targeted. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that well. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping the channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
JB Nijalki. That's what he said. He said close. So Nijalki. I'll just see if I can remember that. Now, for some reason, I have a very hard time remembering that. But thank you very much once again for that support. And we also have a 5 from Kachulian343. You said next time you guys want to get blocked by a Russian official, ask them. So does Putin have erectile dysfunction too, or is it just your missiles?
Oh, like I think they'll get us on a hit list. Actually, like we'll be upgraded from being blocked to a
We're already
hit
on
list.
it.
Oh yeah, that's true. We are on the hit list. Oh well, I forgot. I forgot we're on a hit list. But yeah, that might get us upgraded to hit list prime or something like that, like to where we're an express order at that point. But still, a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel keep running. And we'll have to look into asking one of them that sometime. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have another $20 super chat from none other than QWERTYMAN183. And thank you very much once again, QWERTYMAN, for that $20 support. And they said, come visit Finland. We love you guys here. And we love Finland. We love Finland, by the way. If I could ever go visit there, I would, because they always say if you want to win, you hire a Finn. That's what they've always said, at least in the rally world. So they hire Finns for that reason, because the Finns love to rally. But I tell you what, this right here, I want to see Finland. It's a very nice place. Y'all got to watch out, though. Y'all got a little bit of a border problem there, right over there with those Ruskies, I think. But rather than that, though, very nice country. But Enforcer, what say you?
I want to go to Turku. I've heard cool things about this place of Turku. Take a look. This day was the Willy
that
Wonka
chocolate river.
But yeah,
Willy Wonka would be proud of this.
Dude, that's how I'd be vibing if I was in Turku.
Damn, that's an interesting sculpture.
Is this guy okay? Like, is he all right? Like, I don't know. But it's really cool city. I would like to see it myself. I mean, just look at it. Just look at it. 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 Why won't you look at it? But still, I thank you so much for the massive support, QWERTYMAN. And I would like to go and see Finland one day. I'd like to see all the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And I'd also like to see the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And then the Eastern European countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic and Slovakia, and then Hungary, and then Romania. Well, you know, maybe not Hungary and Romania, but maybe one day. Honestly, all like the diplomacy and foreign policy aside, Hungary and Romania are actually really cool. I would like to go and see them. It's just, you know, It's just that sometimes the governments of like Hungary is a somewhat questionable thing. Romania, though, is pretty chill. But I'd like to see all of Europe one day. I'd really like to travel around and see a lot of stuff. It's just that the chance of getting to do that is really slim because we always have to be working on this channel. Otherwise, the whole thing implodes, really. So one day we will get the chance, hopefully, and I would hope that that's sooner rather than later. But I don't know when we would be able to pull that off or how, really. But still, a big thanks to you for the support, QWERTY man, and I am 100% behind eventually visiting Finland. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kachulian 343 yet again, who puts in a 5. Is it also, given the lack of functional missiles in Russia, if we have the big boom, America will be the winner. A lot of us just won't be here to see it.
That's true. That's true. But sadly, there really isn't anything of a winner in a nuclear war, or anything in the concept of it, at least, where someone comes out mostly unscathed. Really a tough thing. But yeah, basically, we would come out as the winner, at least in the total numbers and the figures once it's all done. It's just that probably most of us here in the channel right now wouldn't be alive to see that, Matthew, me included. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kachulian yet again. And they said Russia is population dense and we're spread out and have lots of natural radiation barriers across parts of the country. America will survive, but at great cost.
Well, I mean, it's possible, but it would take a long time to rebuild. It'd take quite a long time, actually. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a $5 support from No Shocks Are Okay, who said, I noticed chat's pro-Ukraine, but I only passing on the source info, right, from in theater contacts.
And I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Ryan H. on Wheels, who said, West Virginia has some insane folklore. Check out the Mothman and the Flatwoods Monster, LSA.
The Mothman. Mothman is probably like one of the more interesting ones than me, because he looks scary, but he doesn't really do anything, He just kind of like tells people something's happening, and then he just bounces. But that's the Mothman.
Oh, wow. That thing is he's just misunderstood.
Dude, he just shows up, man, and he goes, ah! And then everyone goes, ah! And then he says, hey, by the way, there's going to be like a flood in a week. See ya. And then he just leaves. It's like, okay, well, that was the Mothman, everyone. And also, what was the other one?
The other one was the Flatwoods Monster.
Flatwoods Monster. Does the Flatwoods Monster happen to have flat feet?
No, it's still eligible for military service.
So it's a creature. Let's see. Investigators now suggest it was a meteor. There's actually like
a meteor.
There's like a deep amount of story behind this thing, but apparently this is the Flatwoods Monster.
That looks like bollocks.
Honestly, this looks like something out of like Doctor Who. This looks like what would run the Daleks if there was like a leader of the Daleks that wasn't one of them. This would be it. Interesting, but I don't know. It doesn't really do it for him. Mothman's cool. Mothman's cool because he's kind of like, he's chill like that, He shows up and he tells you about stuff. But the Flatwoods Monster, I mean, I don't know. It just kind of seems a little unoriginal. But one that I really like the most, one of my favorites, especially from the East Coast, is the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. Now, if you listen to the real story by Washington Irving, it's basically in the story that the Headless Horseman isn't really real. It's just, it's something that this guy did in the story. Anyways, this is the Headless Horseman in kind of a sense. But in the real story, I don't think he carried around a pumpkin. I think he carried around his severed head. But this is a really cool story. Probably one of the more interesting ones from American folklore. Interesting enough, Washington Irving wrote this story in Birmingham, England. He wasn't even in America, and he had never even been to Sleepy Hollow when he wrote the story, ever in his life. But he wrote it, and it became a centerpiece of New England folklore, and kind of like the horror side of history of that area is this Headless Horseman deal.
He would have had a future in the freak show if he had ever, applied.
Man, ooh, man, I got no head, but I've been hearing that Bubba's been getting some. Oh, like,
Oh,
oh man, and then we got to ask: is Bubba a person or is it that horse? But anyways, with that, it's still the headless horseman is one of the more interesting stories, in my opinion. But there are a lot. Honestly, there are a lot of interesting stories in American folklore. All kinds, like just really crazy ones: heroes, villains, monsters. Very interesting stuff American stories are, but anyways, Mothman's chill like that. That's basically the whole bottom of the rabbit hole there. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you once again for your support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Ross Nib. And thank you very much, Ross, for that very generous $50 support right there. And we do
damn.
appreciate that. And Ross said, hey, lads, thanks again for another solid effort. And Enforcer Matt could take Travelcalm on his next train ride. It may help with the motion sickness. Maybe a peg for the nose when the shit smell is overwhelming. Plus, noise-canceling headphones is a must. LSA. Now, Ross, I think I had Dramamine on the train. Dramamine usually works like whenever I need it, which I really never need it, because I don't get sick on planes, ships, trucks. I don't get sick in really anything except for the train. So I don't know. Next train ride, I don't think that's gonna be a long time off for ever like try the train again. Maybe one day, but I think I'm going to have to pass. Honestly, the train is not for me. But Enforcer, what say you?
The train's all for me, and I can take it the way it is, like I did last time in the Coast Starlight. Great way to ride it or to see the country is by train, and I can't recommend it enough, folks. Take the train. You'll thank me later. Or maybe not, but then it's too late. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you once again for support, Ross Nib, and helping this channel to keep running. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to QWERTYman. Once again, he puts in another 20 euro support, and thank you very much, QWERTYman, for that support. And he said, we are not living at the pre-internet ages, people. Guys at nuclear silos don't just go all out if command comes. Just a reality.
And QWERTYman, in Russia, that's always been true, but in America, the orders will be followed, because America has a nuclear doctrine that is defensive only, so we only fire when we are fired at with a nuclear weapon. That's basically the only time we ever would. And for the sake of the nation, our battery commanders, not our battery commanders, but our submarine captains, their first officers, and everyone else in charge of the nuclear arsenal on land here, out in the west where we're at right now, they will follow the order, because why wouldn't they at that point? We're about to be obliterated by the Russians. And I'll be honest with y'all, I'm not really a petty person, but if the Russians are going to kill a third of everyone instantly in America and another third over the next 2 years because of the fallout and the subsequent damage that it causes in America and the collapse of civilization that it'll create, I mean, I'm going to want to take the Russians down with me. And I think that a lot of those people in those nuclear silos are going to agree with me on that, because that's why they're there. And also they have to pass a great deal of tests and examinations to make it to being a commander of one of those nuclear silos, because they have to know that if the order is given, they will follow it. But a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Measureman, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Measureman, as well. They said, check out Swedish folklore. Very creepy. And come visit Sweden on your way to Finland. We love y'all over here, too.
Hey, we will take a little look at it. And I wish, you know what? I'll take a really quick look. We're starting to run overtime, but I'll take a look at it because I don't want to leave Sweden hanging. Swedish folklore. Oh, y'all the folks with like the trolls and stuff. Oh yeah, look at that, dude. They got a million of them, and they've got names like Skogafoss. Brother, I think that's a table in IKEA.
Could be, honestly.
Man, honestly, I like those names on the IKEA furniture, folks. They are so hard to keep up with. But anyways, very interesting. Look at this. I mean, they got a lot of it. Dang. Oh, actually,
you know, a crazy thing is like, the weird thing about Sweden, you know how they have Stockholm syndrome. That's like, you know, the thing. That's like Stockholm syndrome, old-fashioned term. They call it Stockholm syndrome. But they say that when these creatures right here assault you, you have this weird psychological response where the victim actually ends up developing positive feelings or a bond with the ugly thing right there. And apparently it's a coping mechanism because it's just so ugly. You have to come around. Like you have to develop positive feelings, because if you don't, this thing right here is just gonna, it's just, I mean, look at it.
Man, honestly, man, This painting is giving off some very odd vibes. I don't like it. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
I
Like,
feel like we just got. I feel like this might be a picture from the island or something.
you know, I just don't know what's giving it that feeling.
That's what they really look like.
And then let's see here. Oh, look, the water sprite. Yeah, I would definitely go in the water for that thing and then get drowned by it. You know, honestly,
Looks sad. Pitiful
honest-
ass thing.
bro, that pitiful ad looking monster, man. Like, bro, dude, in the modern day, dude, if this thing popped up, bro, someone would be like, man, pull out their phone and snap a picture of it and then put it on Snapchat. Look at the pitiful ad thing. He's sitting in the water like that. Like, man,
Sad ass creature.
man, oh, sad ass creature of the lake, what is your wisdom? Like, man, honestly. But dang, man, like, I'm telling you, what? Oh, this is a Kraken. Kraken's like just a big thing for maritime stories, really. And then they got the elves. I'm not going to click on that picture. I don't know what's up with that picture. And then they got the Draugr, which is corporeal undeads, which protect their burial mounds. Huh. Well, I guess they kind of look like that. I mean, you know, undead.
Oh, it's like a freaking what's that thing called? The ink blotter test or something like that. I forgot the name of it, but it's like what do you see here? It's like I see a horse and I see the Liquid Death logo.
Man, bruh, he's like real. Like, bruh, he's a man. Damn, bruh, I didn't know we were doing psychiatric analysis on a real one, bruh. Dab me up, bruh. And still really cool. I wish we could look into it more. And also, there's really interesting folklore, especially from Central and Eastern Europe. I would say because we're not really familiar with theirs the most, being Western Europeans generally, and being raised in that sort of a folklore sort of a deal, and American folklore being heavily inspired by that. Very interesting stuff comes out of Scandinavia, Central and Eastern Europe. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Crispy, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Crispy, as well, for that $5 support. And we also have a 5 from Ed, and Ed said, LSA, Irish Ed here, and doesn't Russia have enough land now?
Yeah, they pretty much do. Most of it's, funnily enough, useless, but I'd say that they have enough considering it's 15% of the surface of the globe, or at least the usable land surface of the globe. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $4 support from Plazoth. And thank you very much, Plazoth, for that support, by the way. And also a huge shout out to Andriy Burnett for also putting in a $2 support. And thank you both very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank the both of y'all. Greatly, as a matter of fact, for supporting this channel. Because while you didn't throw in comments, we're still greatly appreciative of all of y'all's support. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, folks, it's now time to jump into our live chat questions, including our Morse code decoders of the night. And we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Johnny Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabla Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush Cooper Took Side, and Brian Blairstown. And they said the Morse code says, man, Putin acting like he all big and scary, and he can't even get things up, LMAO, LLT, LSA.
And you know, folks, that is the dichotomy of Matthew. He'll say erectile dysfunction 40 minutes earlier in stream, like completely flat out. And then when I make the innuendo in the Morse code message, then he gets scared to read it. But beyond that,
I had to process it. I had to look at it, and I had to think about it.
Bro, you heard that song, man. No, my it's a grueling Stasik. Man, he's like, bro, I had to read that out. And man, you did. But you did well. You did well, man. You powered through and got through it. But, folks,
Thanks.
that is the you're welcome. You're welcome. Honestly, man, that would have been a hard one to read off. But still, ding, 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 shh, that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail, or on the nail, or whichever one else about to say, and y'all got that correct. I got to congratulate the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps for getting that correct time and time again. Because while I had a voice crack there, which was about to happen, and I just avoided it by a smidge, y'all been getting that correct for 1,300 days of war, which is truly incredible. And so with that, a big congratulations for y'all once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the live chat.
We have one more super chat. We have one more super chat. Then let's grab that one from QWERTY Man, and he puts in a €10. And thank you very much, QWERTY Man, for that support as well. And he said, "Don't make fun on Sweden. Check out the War of Narva." And Sweden was the emperor of Europe from Finland.
Oh, the great battle of Narva. I gotta say, the Northern Wars were cool. I wish we could talk about this a lot more. We're actually well over time at this point, but I got to thank you for support, QWERTY Man. And I actually do have a lot of respect for the Swedes. Gustavus Adolphus was not only a great leader, but he was a visionary, at least in the realm of pike and shot era tactics. and pretty much started to phase out pike and shot and started to move it into the line battle formations, which were incredibly famous during the 18th and 19th centuries. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And remember, everyone, it was generally Gustavus Adolphus who brought in the era of the line battle and brought the end of the pike and shot era to a close. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed it the best we can. And with that, it is time for us, folks, to move on into the live chat questions. We, due to time constraints, are only going to be able to get 3 live chats, and then we're going to be rounding the stream on out for the night. And so we are on to the third to last question of the night.
This one goes to Quantum Fighter, who said, is it true the U.S. have classified the Ukraine peace deal for Ukraine, and even the EU has no idea what's in the document?
They haven't classified it for the Ukrainians from what we understand for now, but the Europeans are completely out of the process, which is absolutely insane in my opinion. But I hope that does address that well. We are on to the second to last question of the night.
And we also have a question here from Bobo Uzala. He said, do you think the most recent peace deal proposed by the United States will remain?
I don't think so. I don't even think the Russians are willing to talk to the United States about it, so most likely not. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Sly Bacon, who said, what are the odds that those empty freighters are actually carrying the drones that are breaching NATO?
There's a possibility. I would say that it's a bit of a lower one in my opinion, but there is a possibility that that could be the case. I would say chances are, though, 5 to 10%. Probably not too high. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, folks, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all for enjoying the stream tonight. We had 73,000 people here in total. That's a lot of people, crazily enough. And we had 10.5 thousand people here at the peak. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people have been here tonight and have once again considered the Enforcer channel to be their primary source of news. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if we got enough news in the middle of the day tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, folks, we will see you all either then or there. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for once again joining us yet again, another night of the War News stream here, and a huge shout out to the over almost 75,000 people that were here by the end of the stream, and we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on our next night of War News streams, and also be sure to join me midday tomorrow if there isn't enough news for a short war video, which there may be, we'll have to wait and see, and we'll cover all the news that's happening breaking in the middle of the day. But with that, thank you all for watching, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Herum Slava, get some rest, and good night.